so hell-bent on giving, walking a wire, convinced it's not living if you stand outside the fire.
Welcome to God is Open. I am your host, Christopher Fisher. Today on God is Open, we're going to be talking about the Matt Slick, Chris Fisher debate. It was 1 year ago, so this is a retrospective. I recently rewatched it, and boy, was it interesting and funny. And so I just want to talk through. I don't think we ever talked through the cross exam. What I was thinking, how I was answering, what the strategy was, and why some of his questions were bad questions. So we're going to try to cover some of those. But I had a little Garth Brooks, a little intro, and the music video back when it came out, I don't know, like the 80s or 90s or whatever, Garth Brooks. It was cringe back then, and it's cringe today. So it's about this guy with Down syndrome that runs this race, and the dad's all mad in the background. He's like, "Oh, my son shouldn't be running races," and then he's yelling at him when his kid trips. He's like, "Get up, run the race." But I had a friend, my sister was dating this kid named Justin, and one day he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to a bonfire. We're going to be burning all the things that are like idols, like things that you put a lot of investment in other than God." And so it's like these things actually happened, and he was going to go burn his Garth Brooks photo, his poster, and all his Garth Brooks CDs. I'm like, okay, I guess some people really, really like Garth Brooks. That it probably should avoid putting posters of Garth Brooks on your wall, or any guy for that matter. But that was pretty funny. So we got Matt Slick here, and he is, oh, there we go. He is about to do the cross-examination, and so he's going to try to take point and lead the conversation, as he often does. His strategy is to try to ask really, really long and complicated questions and make really long and complicated responses and demand very short sound bites from his opposition. And he wants to bring you down his rabbit trails that make no sense, and it's very we'll listen to him. He's trying to win on technicalities, word definitions. And so go ahead, Matt Slick. I got 15 drinks so far. The audience is probably dying right now. Oh, you see his big sigh there. So I had a little drink counter, and every time he made one of the fallacies that we had talked about, I had clicked that drink counter. And so this is my signal to him. We are not going to be tolerating your nonsense, your bad faith engagement, how you belittle other people, and you pretend you're so smart. Oh, I could teach you everything, things like that. This is me saying this just not going to happen today. It's just not going to be allowed. And so he got called out fairly publicly. So the thing is about this debate, this is right now at like 14,000 views, and this was on its way to be Marlon Wilson's #1 watch debate. But Marlon Wilson delisted it from his channel because he's embarrassed for the Calvinists. It's okay when the Calvinists are doing that to other people, like you have in the Sean Griffin debate when he was against Anthony Rogers. Anthony Rogers was acting really, really bad. It's okay for the Calvinists to do it, but when it's done to the Calvinists, it cannot be allowed to stand. And so he had a lot of external and internal pressure on him to stop that. And they were censoring everyone in the comments too. And so it did not go good for the Calvinists. They needed to censor this debate. So free will is just a concept. We find free will in the Bible because God makes man and then regrets his own action in making man. And so Matt Slick had asked me, what is free will? Can you define free will? This is not a term I used, not a term that I brought up in the debate. It's not a term that decides whether or not open theism is true. Open theism exists with or without free will in some fashion. And so what I'm doing here is I'm redirecting to the Bible. This is supposed to be a discussion about is open theism taught in the Bible? And he wants to argue semantics and word definitions. Free will is not a thing. God's not privy to whatever else there is out there. He's not privy to predestination or eternal settled future. And in fact, in the flood, what happens is God lowers his standard based on what he learns about mankind. He decides to save mankind forever for the same reason he destroyed them, that they have evil in their hearts from their youth. He learns something about man and lowers his standard. Yeah, he let me talk for a while there. And so I just kept talking and just saw how far I could go. So God's not privy to whatever fated future you think there exists.
Can you please define what free will is?
So you re-asked that. The fact of the matter is, if in the Bible God does not have access to future events, then it undermines his entire theology. The future is, even if the future is deterministic or fated, God doesn't have access to that and doesn't operate as if the future is fated or true. And so that can't be the case in his theology, because God has to be omniscient in some respect, in which God has divine, simple, eternal, unfalsifiable, non-discursive knowledge of all things. So if God is ignorant of future events, what will happen, Matt Slick's theology falls apart. God has to know all these determined events. If God doesn't know that, then the logical conclusion is that free will is true, if you want to maintain that God knows the reality of how the world works. Something like that. But Matt Slick does not want to affirm that. He wants to actually argue word definitions. This is the referential fallacy. And so the referential fallacy is technically defined as pretending, getting it in your mind, your dumb mind, not your dumb mind, but in general people in their dumb mind, that words represent accurate depictions of reality. The truth is that words are symbolic. Words are pointers. Words represent. They're symbolic, but there's nothing in a cat that demands that there's an English word called cat that has a specific definition. We use words to transfer meaning from one person to another. But of course, cat is a flexible term. When we're talking about a cat, are we talking about a statue that's a cat? Are we talking about a live cat? Are we talking about a tiger? Are we talking about a caterpillar machinery? Something like that. Even if you're limiting it to the mammals, where do we draw the line? At the margins, our word definitions break down. So my brother and I covered this in one of our podcasts. I think it's called The Theory of Everything. I think that's where we covered it. But words break down at the margin because words don't actually point to reality. They're not a one-to-one ratio. We don't live in the Platonic forms in which words and images exist in either, pointing to very specific objects, and all these objects are very minutely defined and distinct from one another. Things blend together. Definitions at the margin fall apart. That's just how language works. But he wants to get a definition from me of free will that he could pick apart as if any definition we give of free will represents reality on some sort of one-to-one basis. We could just come up with this formula, and this formula that we come up in our head just depicts reality. That's just the formula by which reality works. But again, reality doesn't work that way. He's going to try to get a definition and then try to find in the definition where there might be some contradiction or leverage that he could use with other definitions in order to get his point across. But I think this is a category error because, again, it's a referential fallacy. It's pretending that our words line up to reality and that creating whatever formula or whatever definition of free will line up to reality. It just doesn't. That you brought up the concept. When did I use the concept free will? God's not privy to a settled future.
I'm just asking you, can you define what free will is?
You use your own definition. I'll accept whatever you say.
You don't know what free will is?
So, yep, this is what he does. He says, oh, if you don't want to play my games and define it, I offered for him to define it. I said, hey, you go ahead and define it. And so his response is, oh, you don't know how to define it? Because he's arrogant, he's rude, and he's kind of a garbage person. And so this is him trying to just belittle me. as if that I don't have hundreds of hours of podcasts where I do talk about concepts such as free will. He could go look and he could go see if that's accurate or not. This is just him posturing. He's a bad person.
As an open theist?
No, listen. So my opening said that you only care about philosophical concepts. The Bible doesn't talk about free will. It sometimes talks about free will offerings. Okay, so this is great. So I set up premises in the start of the debate, and I said one of them was that he just wants to talk about philosophy that's not talked about in the Bible. And so I could see very easily him dealing with another open theist and then getting sucked down this rabbit trail of, oh, what defines free will, and going back and forth about free will. That has nothing to do with the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk about free will. They weren't philosophers of free will. They weren't talking about fatalism and how fatalism lines up with free will. This is just not biblical theology. This was not in their theological vocabulary. And so this is what I'm trying to point out, that he relies almost exclusively on non-biblical categories, non-biblical speech patterns. It's not worth it to go down these debate patterns or these debate paths in which you're squabbling over technical word definitions. Number one, that's not how reality works. And number two, it's not biblical theology. And so if you're critiquing Molinism relies quite heavily on very technical definitions of words, and those words representing reality in a very specific way. So you can do an internal critique, but I'm just going to tell you that these mental models are just models, and they're best fit, and they're practical to the extent they're useful. But us making up formulas in our head about how the world works, that's just us guessing around. It's not representative of reality. It talks about people choosing. God doesn't have knowledge of what people are going to do. So in that sense, yeah, there's some concepts in there that God doesn't have access to any settled future. And so can you deal with those concepts, or do you want like a philosophical discussion? Yeah, so that's the point. So if free will, to the extent that it exists, and to the extent that free will is biblical, it has to match up with the biblical data. And so if he's going to posit definition of free will that's biblical, it has to incorporate the fact, that's what I'm trying to stress here, it has to incorporate the fact that God does not have access to this future. God is sometimes surprised. God is sometimes taken aback. God sometimes changes his mind. Free will, if it does exist, if it is biblical, if the Bible is true, it has to incorporate those facts in some fashion. So whatever definition he comes up with needs to include that as something that's allowed within that definition. But he doesn't want to do that because he wants a very philosophical definition. He wants to talk about the philosophical definitions. He wants to ignore the biblical data. And the reason he wants to do that is because he presupposes his theology. He actually comes to this debate and he lays that out, and that's his entire point, is that he comes to the Bible with his theology preloaded, and then he tries to accuse me of it as well. And I didn't play that game, so it didn't land very well for the audience.
I'm not the one who started off with insults, and I didn't call you a liar as you called me. And I'm not the one who said what.
He said, I'm not the one who started calling insults. I said, you didn't start. You did. You had pre-written opening in which you insult me all the time in your opening. You didn't start. So yes, technically you didn't start calling me names right away, but it was in your opening statement that existed before my opening. Matt Slick, you liar. He's a bad person. Yeah.
And I'm not the one who said that I only care about philosophy, that you only do. I care about scriptures. And if you study anything that I write, it's always about scripture. So I'm going to take it you don't know what free will is. All right. So does God exhaustively know himself?
It's the best thing to do is when he just makes these outrageous claims, and his little belittling comments is to laugh in his face. Like, what are you going to do? You're just going to, if you're sitting there stoic, or if you don't respond, then you're affirming to the audience that what he's saying has some sort of truth. No, you are a bad faith individual, Matt Slick. I'm going to laugh because you're stupid. You're a stupid man. And so it's good to call you out when you do these things. It's good to have some sort of accountability for your bad faith behavior. God did not know mankind was going to fail in Genesis 6. He says, "I regret my." So this is like the third or fourth time that I've brought up this counter. I'm saying, hey, look at this event. If it needs to fit into whatever definition that you have going on here, he doesn't want to deal with that text. Own decision in creating man because they are so wicked. He regrets his own actions. And so whatever model you have, the biblical authors did not share your model.
Does God know him?
So this is something that that I need to and did emphasize throughout the debate. The biblical authors did not share your model. And so he's going to try to build models, and I'm going to show throughout that his models all fail. Like his idea that all men die. Not all men die. There's certain people who live and go straight to heaven. He says all people have sinned. Well, do you think that Jesus sinned? And he gets all mad about that. Like when I point out that his alls don't mean alls. His alls has exceptions, even within the things he's saying. He's not very specific. And if his if then else model, like if you sin, then you die, it just does not work when you look at the biblical data. Your models fail. Your philosophy fails because the biblical data just doesn't work by these hard and fast formulas. God forgives Isaiah's sins when he brings them up to heaven with a burning coal. Not all these sins are forgiven through like a Christ atonement thing. People have to do this like this complicated thing where like, oh, the coal was Christ dying before Christ actually died, and that's how this is. It doesn't say that in the text. There's nowhere in the text. That's a massive leap of logic. It makes no sense. And if your thing was a thing, they probably would have explained it back when Isaiah was written, and people wouldn't have to like do this weird guessing game of 2,000 years later. Because the whole audience in Isaiah would be confused if your thing was a thing, but your thing's not a thing. You're making it up. These are made up formulas. And so I kept throwing wrenches into everything he's saying. Like I brought up Trinitarianism stuff and talking about if the divine can be physical, and just threw him off his game because his formulas just don't work. I'll let him talk.
Himself exhaustively. It's a simple question.
Yeah, these are philosophical questions. The biblical authors don't talk like this. It's a category error. You're talking in false categories. It's because you got philosophical concepts. You don't care about the biblical concepts. God does not have access to some unique future timeline that exists. He regrets his own actions, Genesis 6.
Hey, Marlon.
I'm dying. He's like, Marlon, moderator, may come answer my question, moderator. It's like, I gave you the opportunity. You could have answered your own question and we could have kept rolling. We could have talked about it. But my argument does not depend on free will. It's not a term I brought up. And it's not a term I'm using. And free will it's not rising and falling of open theism. God is open.
Can you please instruct him to not attack my person and tell me what I do and don't care about?
All right.
Can you, hey, moderator, can you instruct my opponent not to tell me what I think? Moderator, he said I cared about something that I don't think that I care about, and I did care about something that I do care. Moderator, can you tell him not to do that? Yeah, I can evaluate. I'm sitting here.
All right, let's make sure we're attacking the arguments. No personal accusations, guys.
Right.
All right.
So your philosophy is not biblical. And so when you talk in these categories, you're not talking in biblical theology. You're talking in a humanism. You're talking in Platonic categories.
Okay, what's a Platonic category?
He set me up because he didn't know how I was going to answer. This is one of the things he does. He thinks he's so smart, and then he asks these questions that he's going to get answers that he's not going to like, and he did not foresee it when he asked these things. Like perfect being theology, where you have to maximize God's greatness based on some sort of metaphysical value system where you're trying to get the top value, and that's what God is. Or the idea that, let's talk about truth values of future propositions. The Bible does not talk like this. These people did not have that as part of their worldview. Okay. This is not biblical theology.
Do you believe in the Trinity?
Yeah.
Do you use reason to arrive at the Trinity?
Do I? No, I look at the biblical data. It seems that Paul talks about an incarnate deity, which is not Platonism, by the way. So I take his what he's trying to do is this weird thing like a Calvinist or whoever does. That's like, okay, so not everything that's biblical is explicitly taught in the Bible, and so we're going to go to a very sensitive subject. It's the Trinity. It's very sensitive. So if you deny the Trinity in any way, or make or say one little thing that puts you in some sort of camp of heresies about the Trinity, then you're done for. And so it's like a trap. But I take it and then I turn it back against him, and I just say, hey, you don't believe in the Trinity because you don't believe that the physical part of Jesus is God. And then he does not know what to do with that, because actually he doesn't. And he says so in this debate that the physical part of Jesus is not God. And so he has to basically affirm to the audience, like the audience is not aware of all these intricacies of Trinitarian theology, and getting him on camera saying that the physical part of Jesus is not God is just fantastic. And so it backfired spectacularly for him to go down this route where it's like, Calvinism is true because the Trinity, if you look at this verse and then this verse and this verse and add them up and then Trinity, so Calvinism's true too. If that's true, then Calvin doesn't work like that. And so it's instantly flipped on him, and he doesn't know how to handle it. He does not know. Platonism, the physical and spiritual can't have overlap. In Jewish theology, they can. That's why people. And guess what? The audience is seeing me lecture him about metaphysics of Greek metaphysics versus Semitic metaphysics, and so he's getting lectured about this, and the whole audience is watching it. It's really embarrassing for him. And then guess what? He has to take the non-Semitic position. That's what he does. He takes the category I identified it as the Greek theology, and he affirms that, and he rejects the Semitic theology, the categories that I said was Semitic theology. It's great. He's painting himself as the philosopher Platonist. People like James White will not answer the question, was the human part of Jesus God? They won't answer the question because it and then James White watched this, and James White was like fuming. He's like, I don't even know this guy. And so every time James White gets to see like a debate with me in it, and then I bring that up, it gets to rub that in James White's face, how much of a coward he is. He gets to get called a coward 20 times over for not answering a basic Trinitarian question. Contradicts their Platonist metaphysics, which God can't share with humanity because that adds parts, that denies divine simplicity. And I'm getting a ton of time to explain this. Simplicity. Again, these are not biblical categories.
Did Jesus know himself what he'd be choosing to do on earth all the time? He's God.
Well, no, you go look at what happens. He doesn't want to go to the cross. And so I bring up practical examples. It's so funny. It's like all you have to do is read the Bible and know what the Bible says. Where did it just happen? There was some YouTube video I was watching earlier today where the guy, there's some guy who comments like, oh, it was on one of my own. I went to the comment section on one of them, and he's like, we only do what's our greatest desire. It's like, because he wants to deny free will. And so people have to act like robots. They have to have a blueprint in their mind that just spits out one specific answer if you run inputs through it. And that's whatever our greatest desire is. And so I posted the verse where Paul says, I do what I don't want to do, and I don't want to do what I do. It like Paul disagrees with your philosophy. These people do not accept your ideas about how the world works. It's just not in there. You're making it up. It's false. It's fake. And you're just spouting it as if you have some sort of evidence for this being true. It's just nonsense on stilts. You're getting it from nowhere. You're making it up. And so there's no basis in these claims where, oh, we're like a best idea maximizer. We're our highest desire maximizer. That's not a biblical concept. It's a pagan concept. It's deterministic, and it's not found in the Bible. He prays for God to let him out of it. He doesn't know the time and the date of the second coming. Jesus doesn't know things within the Bible.
It's admitted in the book.
So I just give him like 3 or 4 examples, and then I shut him down because he wants to talk philosophy, he wants to talk metaphysics, he wants to set out rules. And I'm giving him practical counterexamples from the Bible, and so he either can argue those counterexamples and be shut down by going to any one of them, and to see that that has nothing to do with his philosophy, or he does what he does, where he just like obfuscates and he wants to re-ask complicated questions and kind of ignore the actual practical data and examples. So David says your smile and happy voice is what killed him the most. Right. Because I'm having fun. I'm confident. I'm making fun of him. He's got stupid answers. He's got stupid points. Like he's getting wrecked really bad.
Bible. So whatever category of omniscience you hold, Jesus doesn't have it.
So that's one thing I do also in this debate, where he's like, "Oh, you don't think, you don't think this?" I said, well, "Not me. The biblical authors did think this," and so it drives home the point that the Bible is our data set. That's what we need to read. We need to figure out what their opinions are. It's not about me. It's about them. And if for him to try to contradict me, he's contradicting those biblical authors. So I'm saying Jesus doesn't hold your theology objectively. He doesn't talk like it. He doesn't act like it. He talks like your philosophy is absolutely false. He could the Calvinists always turn to like the crucifixion. They're like, if one thing was fated, it must have been the crucifixion. Like, Jesus didn't think so. Your one thing, it's like you could have looked through the Bible first before that was the thing you're going to stand on, was that the crucifixion couldn't be undone and subverted. You might have like looked into it first to see if anyone in the Bible agreed with you. Well, Jesus didn't. Jesus thought the crucifixion was not fated. We get that from multiple pieces of evidence, and so it's like their philosophy is free floating from the Bible. It's not found in the Bible. They just make things up, and then that's their argument. They're getting it from nowhere. And then when you turn to the Bible, it says the exact opposite, which is that's the funniest thing. It's the funniest thing about these debates. If open theism is biblical, we got the biblical examples. We had the Bible that we could talk about and quote to. And he has these little methods where he tries to subvert the things that the Bible says, like all have sinned, so all are going to die. Well, not everyone's dead, and so he'll have like some like try to make this complicated thing to say that the people who didn't die actually died. Like, no.
So the reason he didn't know the day nor the hour is because of it's a wedding feast idiom. I've taught on this many times, and I can explain it to you, but it would be not conducive to time right now. You see, Jesus.
I can explain all of this. Probably not, because if it takes you that much time, it's probably nonsense.
Jesus, he had free will because he's God, which you can't even define free will.
If God has free will, open theism is true. Welcome to open theism, Matt Slick.
And I asked you if God knows himself exhaustively, and you deny doing that because he knows himself, because the Spirit of God, Scripture says that the Spirit knows the mind of God. So we can say from Scripture that God knows himself exhaustively, because that's what the Bible says. All right, great. Now, if God knows himself exhaustively, and Jesus, and you don't even know how the Trinity's arrived yet, apparently. I don't know.
He just makes these wild accusations. Oh, you're so dumb. You don't know this. You don't know this. You don't know this. And he's just trying to throw them out in quick succession without giving me a chance to respond. It's a bad faith interaction. It's a bad faith individual. He deserves everything he gets. He's a bad person.
If you even know how it's derived, because you have to use logic and Scripture to do that. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I just don't know. We could discuss that sometime. So here's my question.
Catching up with the drink counter.
So perhaps you might want to focus.
Yeah, so I'm trying to say, hey, let's get the drink counter up and going again, because look at this. Look at this bad faith interaction. You got to call this guy out.
Focus on the arguments and discussion instead of trying to address the
You're
audience.
You're not making arguments. You asked a question.
So I asked you.
And then
I
you
asked
made
you
some claims.
I've asked you questions, and you're not able
to.
Yeah. He asked a question, and then he made a bunch of claims. The claims aren't arguments. Like, that's not like that. You could just say whatever. It's like that's just saying something is not an argument for that thing. It's just like, why would, so it's like, claims made without evidence can be rejected without evidence, that famous little dictum. And so he just says whatever he wants. There's no basis or rationale. He thinks there is. He thinks he's sat through it. He had a self-meditation session where he saw the intellect, maybe like a Augustine ascent to the one where he was divinely enlightened, that all his philosophy that he put together in his own mind in his own bathroom, that's actually true. But they're just claims. There's nothing to recommend them to us that we should even care about his claims, rather than just toss them in the trash where they belong.
Answer the questions.
They're not biblical questions. They're not about the Bible. They're about your philosophy. Why do I care about your philosophy?
If Jesus had free will is not a good question.
In the Bible, yes, Jesus had free will. He didn't want to go to the cross.
Okay, good. But what is free will?
Not to go to the cross. He didn't have to go to the cross. God has contingencies. God has possibilities. God did not have to send Jesus to the cross.
Wow. Really?
Wow. Did you get that? Did you get that? He thinks the cross was a fated event. He really, really cares about this and thinks that it was necessary, rather than looking at the biblical evidence for that. Why in his mind would he be so, why would that be shocking to him? Why would that be so anathema to his views? It's because he's got this very specific philosophy that free floats from the Bible. His views and positions are consequences of the philosophy he brings to the Bible, rather than extracted from the biblical data.
Wow. Jesus says, not my will, but yours be done. He prefaces that so that God does not.
So I mock him because he's so outraged. I'm saying, you're outraged not at me, but at Jesus. That's who you're outraged at. And so hopefully the audience is catching some of this.
Not fulfill his prayer. He says, if there's any way to have this cup pass from me, let's do that, but not my will, but yours be done. He adds that because he's hedging against God changing his plan radically.
So now my tone changes. I am in lecture mode. I'm in discipline mode. I'm teaching this man who's ignorant about what the Bible actually says. So you see the tonal change.
In order to do what Jesus wants. They have different wills. They want different things, right? Wow. And so Jesus doesn't think the cross is fated. He thinks that legions of angels can save him from the cross. Jesus does not share your philosophy.
Okay. So you said Jesus had free will. So I'll offer you one more time. You said it. Can you define what free will is?
Jesus didn't believe in a fated future timeline and had no access to it. Neither did God. There's only free will. There's not another option. There's not a fatalistic worldview that's at play that can be an option. He can do what he wants.
I don't hold to a fatalistic worldview.
He doesn't hold to a fatalistic worldview, although all things are foreknown from eternity in explicit detail and couldn't be other. He doesn't believe in a fatalistic. This is just game playing with these Calvinist types. It's like James White trying to make the distinction between fatalism and determinism. He's like, oh, whatever, it's not personal. Yeah, but which one? Okay, pop quiz. James White says, did he say, I don't believe in determinism because determinism isn't personal? Or did he say, I don't believe in fate because fate isn't personal? It's a toss-up. It could have been either one, because really they're synonymous. There's not a real difference. He's just being pedantic. And that's what Slick is doing here. I don't like the word fatal. Like Augustine did this too. He's like, I don't like fate. But in the ancient world, granted, fate was associated with stars and star movements. And so when Augustine's criticizing fate, he's criticizing astrology primarily.
But I'm asking you you're using the terms. I'm asking you to define them. Since you do it from the Trinity, right? You do it from the Trinity.
When the Bible talks about free will offering, it means that someone's doing it volitionally. It's their own choice.
So I did give them some practical definition for free will, that there's no future fated timeline. The timeline's not set. He doesn't want to take that definition because that will really mess with whatever he's going to propose
to do that.
Okay. So do you affirm that Jesus has two natures?
Sure. What do you mean by nature?
Are you serious?
His eyes get wide. He's like, oh, you don't know what I mean by nature? You don't know what a nature is? Yes. Inform me what a nature is. And we should talk about the Bible, because the Bible uses the word all the time. And there's great theological speculation and debate about what that is precisely means, if anything, like super tangible, rather than just like normal use of, it's the nature of women to marry up social strata. That's just their nature. What does that mean? Does that mean it's like a metaphysical necessity that they do that? Does that just mean that tends to be where most of them, rule of thumb, go? There's different definitions for different words. But listen to this. Let's hear his definition of what a nature is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Does Jesus have a divine?
what are you using?
It's
Because
an
guess what?
it's an
There's platonic
ontological essence of the
categories.
nature of something of which properties emanate. So does Jesus have a
Where
divine
are
nature?
you getting these definitions?
Let's rewind.
Does Jesus have a
Platonic
ontological essence of the
categories?
nature of something of which properties emanate? So does Jesus
One
have a
more
divine
time.
nature?
To it. Neither did God. There's only free will. There's not another option. There's not
Okay.
there's not a fatalistic worldview that's at play that can be an option. He
Yeah, I
can
don't
do
hold to a
what he wants.
fatalistic worldview. But I'm asking you you're using the terms. I'm asking you to define them. Since
You're
you
using
do
the
it from the
terms.
Trinity, right? You do it from the
Yeah, when the
Trinity.
Bible talks about free will offering, it means that someone's doing it volitionally. It's their own choice to do that.
Okay. So do you affirm that Jesus has two natures?
Sure. What do you mean by nature?
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Does Jesus have a
what are you
divine?
using?
It's
Because guess what?
It's
There's
an
platonic
ontological essence of the
categories.
nature of something of which properties emanate. So
It's an ontological essence of something by which properties emanate. That's his definition. Is that useful? Is that intelligent? Does that represent reality in some sort of way? What is this? What do the biblical authors, like, do they affirm this weird definition? Like is this what Paul's talking about when he says nature? And like his audience is like, oh yeah, it's the ontological essence of something by which properties emanate. Yeah, no.
does Jesus have a
Where
divine
are
nature?
you getting these definitions?
Does Jesus have a divine nature and a human nature?
Right, because in the Semitic worldview, the divine can overlap with the physical, and so that's what Paul is talking about. He's against the Platonist metaphysics, in which the two can't overlap.
So I can talk about idiotic definitions of nature, or I could bring him back to his denial of the biblical idea that the physical can be divine. And because in Platonism, the physical is not divine. The physicals of this lower world, this different substance, and the divine itself, the God substance, has to be perfectly simple. So it can't have parts. It can't have degradation. It can't be part of the lower world. It can't share essence in the physical world. The God part is completely separate, ineffable, and once you utter the name the One, add no further thought to this, is what Plotinus writes, and this is his view of God. So look at his eyes. I'm gonna make him a little bit bigger. Look at his eyes. This is what he's dealing with. He's got this Platonist category, and I'm threatening it. This is being threatened. His eyes right there are being threatened by his categories, because now he's going to have to deal with this fact that he doesn't think that the physical can be divine.
So was the human part of Jesus God? To Paul in Colossians 2, was the human part God?
No, humanity is not divine by its nature.
There you go. He said it. I got him to say it. He said it. Everyone heard it. Okay, so it's great. So I got that little clip out of him. And so now I could use it to mock him, belittle him, berate him, and basically point out to the audience he does not believe that the human part of Jesus is God. And it sounds heretical, doesn't it? It sounds heretical to people who aren't familiar with all these little details. And so it looks really bad for him.
Nature. Jesus had two distinct natures. It's called the hypostatic union, which means in the one person are two distinct natures, and the properties of each nature are ascribed to the single person. That's called the communication of the properties. This is basic Christian theology. So
In
that's what Paul
Colossians 2,
taught.
he's arguing against you because you're the
I tell you what.
Platonist. That's who he's arguing
Tell you what.
against.
Oh, it's so funny. So I'm saying Paul is arguing against you. He is arguing against Matt Slick, and so Matt Slick doesn't know what to do with that because he wants to have himself on the side of Paul, and I'm pulling out a very specific verse with a very specific point that he can't really answer. There's no easy way for him to start claiming this. So I'm gonna see. Someone's asked if if super chats are enabled. I have no idea. So I'll go take a look. Maybe I don't know how to do this, but we'll keep playing.
Why don't you and I sometime have a little discussion on
No, Matt Slick. We're not gonna have. You're not smart enough to have an interaction with to actually get something useful from
biblical theology in the person of Jesus and the Trinity, because I'd like to do that with you if you're interested in that, because I don't think you understand biblical theology in this regard. So Jesus has two distinct natures. Okay, now you still can't define free will, so I'll step in and I'll do it.
I never made the claim Jesus has two distinct natures. In the Semitic mind, the human nature is not a huge chasm between that and the divine. There's overlap. That's why Paul writes that the fullness of God, divinity, was in Jesus physically. He's not a Platonist. He's a Semitic scholar. He's a Pharisee.
Yeah, I'm not a Gnostic. I can start saying things about you. I'm not a Gnostic like you are, or I'm not a nihilist. I could say all kinds of things like this and throw out words.
Okay, so here he gets really mad over nothing. I'm going to rewind it just a little bit so we can rehear that.
Person that's called the communication of the properties. This is basic Christian theology. So
in
that's
Colossians
what Paul taught.
2, he's arguing against you because you're the Platonist.
Tell you what.
That's who he's arguing against.
Why don't you and I sometime have a little discussion on biblical theology in the person of Jesus and the Trinity? Because I'd like to do that with you if you're interested in that, because I don't think you understand biblical theology in this regard. So
you just don't understand. You just don't get it.
Jesus has two distinct natures. Okay, now you still can't define free will, so I'll step in and I'll do it.
I never made the claim Jesus has two distinct natures. In the Semitic mind, the human nature is not a huge chasm between that and the divine. There's overlap. That's why Paul writes that the fullness of God, divinity, was in Jesus physically. He's not a Platonist.
Okay, so here's what I'm saying. I'm saying Paul is not a Platonist. He doesn't accept this metaphysics where the divine has to be something different than physical. Matt Slick instantly gets angry and accuses me of calling him a Platonist, where the immediate context was me saying that Paul doesn't accept Platonist theology. What Matt Slick did in his mind is he equated himself with the Platonist theology I was describing and said, I'm not a Platonist.
He's a Semitic scholar. He's a Pharisee.
Yeah, I'm not a Gnostic. I can start saying things about you. I'm not a Gnostic like you are, or I'm not a nihilist. I could say all kinds of things like this and throw out words I don't think you understand what they mean. Do you affirm or do you deny that Jesus presently has two distinct natures?
Hey, Matt, hold on. Hey, Chris, let's chill on the paddle with the drink sign on it. I really want you guys to have a fruitful discussion. Let's try to be chill on that, so we can interact fairly. All right?
Yeah, show some respect. Do you affirm?
He's freaking out. He's calling names. He's belittling me. He's telling me I don't understand things, and he could teach me things. And then he's like, "You show some respect." It's the thing is he's surrounded himself with sycophants. He gets nothing but this praise all the time, and no one puts him in his place. He's a very bad person.
Affirm or deny that Jesus has two natures?
Oh, Matt, start respecting. If you want respect, I'll give you respect, but you have to show some in return. You haven't been doing that. You've been talking about Mormonism. You've been saying, oh, you don't understand these things, my philosophy. That's not respectful, Matt. Start being respectful.
So I give him a chance to reset. I give him a chance to apologize. I say, here, we could start over on this conversation. Both you and I, we could be good. So this is me acting in good faith to start over, reset, have an actual conversation, an actual dialogue. He doesn't take it. He doesn't even have any interest in taking it. He continues to whine.
Well, I'll start respecting you. We could start over. We could have a respectful conversation. No ad hominems, but you need to control yourself.
And his eyes get wide. He's like, oh, I need to control myself. You need to worship my feet. you need to polish my shoes. If you don't, I'm being disrespected. I'm the great guy here that everyone cares about. Look at his face. Pull that up. This is his face. He's like, oh, he thinks so highly of himself. It's like he doesn't show any deference to anyone else. It's insane. It's like, what am I interacting with here? This is like not a person.
Your hypocrisy is loud and clear since you called me a liar. And
you
should really look.
Yeah, he is a liar. I think I give the example here. Let me talk.
Okay, guys. All right.
Look, this is ridiculous. This guy, look, if we don't get a handle on this, this isn't going to work. If this guy's going to continue to attack my person, to insult me, and to not answer questions because he's not capable of even answering the basic questions, why should we continue? This is ridiculous. This guy needs to mature up and stop being a child.
All right, guys, check this out. I just want you guys to be able to deal with what we're talking about. We're talking about open theism in the Bible, all right? So let's make sure the conversation stays there. The little jabs, and this is for both of you guys, the little jabs, little comments here and there. Let's chill on all of that. Let's get this under control.
Okay, I finally enabled super chats after like 2 years of them being off. And so GMW says, roll in part 4, please. Okay, I got to. Also, a little for the new shirt fund. I got a whole drawer full of like the same style shirt, and so it's like maybe he's trying to buy me more new black shirts. That's pretty nice.
Control. Both of you are adults. Let's behave as such so we can have a fruitful conversation. We're both.
So Marlon, I think Marlon understands that a lot of the abuse is coming from the Matt Slick side, but he doesn't like. He wants to put me in my place because I'm not making his side look very good. And but he's doing this fake little thing where it's like both sides are doing it. It's like all this stuff. It's emanating from Matt. It comes from Matt. This is his character. This is how he interacts in every single debate or interaction. It's like all Matt Slick needed to do to not get drink paddles and click counters was behave like a normal, rational person, having a decent conversation without misrepresenting, without talking over, without his bad faith tricks. That's what the drink counter was for. That's what the paddle was for, is to call him out on his bad faith interactions. All he needed to do, the whole thing could have been avoided. Everything could have been left alone. I could have looked really stupid. If I had this big thing calling out all his bad faith activities and then he just didn't do it the entire debate, the entire interaction, I would look really bad. But the fact is he did it, and he did it all the time, and the whole audience called him out on it all the time for it. So I look like I could prognosticate the future instead of looking stupid. So Judge Riley says, I thought it was hilarious when Martin told you to stop with the drink side. Yeah, in the comments, everyone saying drink was getting banned by the Calvinist moderators because they don't like the fact that Calvinists are being called out in real time for their bad faith arguments. And again, the drink thing was about instant call outs of bad faith behavior that you don't have to respond to in a full detailed response to all the bad faith behavior, just something instantaneous that everyone could see and everyone's going to be able to identify with. Just a quick flash on the screen, something like that. And so it just to shut that bad faith behavior down. Bad faith behavior is bad for a debate. It's bad for interaction. Looks like it makes good TV sometimes. People kind of like this hostile interaction.
Here, Matt, wife is in another room, not feeling too well. He's here. Chris, you have a family you could be having time with right now, but you guys took time away from your families to be able to have fun in this conversation. Let's put aside any past transitions or transgressions you guys might have interacted with earlier. Let's focus on what we're talking about here. Come on.
And so here's where I'd start taking reign of the conversation. I think I start leading here because it's a good transition. And as soon as there's a pause, I'm going to be able to jump in and take over. He's been doing most of the talking. He's been most of the questions. He's not responded to me. And so like when I answer one of his questions and then posit something to him, like about the Genesis 6, he doesn't want to interact with that. And so he goes away from that. So he never interacted with the things that I was saying.
It's not just you guys, it's the audience trying to entertain as well. Remember, there's somebody out there that has no idea what open theism is, and they would like to know. So let's focus on the questions and let's have fun.
Yeah. So in Deuteronomy 8:2, it says, "You shall remember the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not." So my question to Matt Slick is this: is there any dependent clauses or independent clauses or adverbial clauses within that sentence that tells us why God led Israel through the wilderness?
Okay, so my question is not about what the verse means. It's not about his interpretation of the verse. It's just about just like basic reading comprehension, and it throws him off because like how does he answer in any way except for affirming the exact thing that the verse states? And like he's confused. I don't think he knows what dependent clause, independent clause, adverbial clause. I don't think he knows what any of these things are, and so he doesn't know what to do with the question. It looks really bad. It looks really bad. It's like he's supposed to be like this super genius. It's like he it was like when he didn't know what the Byzantine text is or the majority text when he had no idea. It's like, oh, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
And without studying the context with that in mind, I can't give you an answer.
Well, I could just read it again. And
I was like, I could just read it again. Oh, so there's I probably shouldn't still tell the story. But there was a guy who once told me a story about where he's this really low ranking person in this company, but he's got the purchasing authority and he's sitting with all these bigwigs, and he's the one who signs the contract, and the bigwig guy's all confused. He's like, "Is that all it takes?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, if I could sign the contract again if you want." And like it's kind of like mocking this. It's belittling this whatever idea. So it's like I could just read the verse for you again. It's so belittling. And the thing is, he could have just answered like a normal person, but either he's confused about the question, he didn't know what the question's asking, but like normal people who are familiar with normal grammatical concepts, they would be able to answer it. And I'm dying. This was a really funny part of the debate for me.
"And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not." Are there any clauses, independent or dependent or adverbial, that explains why he led them in the wilderness?
I'm not sure which part of syntax you want me to address as dependent clause or adverbial clause.
So he uses the word syntax because he needs to because he looked bad not being able to answer the question. And so he's trying to now counter signal the audience like, oh yes, I know all about grammar. I just used the word syntax, which is not a normal word. So he's trying to save face. That's what was happening right there. And
perhaps you might.
Is there a reason that the verse gives?
And so I'm clarifying what my question means. Is there a reason? And so if you start with that, then it gives them too much leeway and latitude to just answer something completely outside the verse. And so you need to focus on the grammar and syntax initially. But my clarification question is clarifying that I want the grammar and syntax reason. And so then he's able to finally answer. I don't know if he caught on just 2 seconds previously, but
gives why God led them through the wilderness.
Well, from what you are reading, it says that it was to test them to know what was in their heart.
Yeah. So,
oh, you look at my face. Let me go back and just like, oh, he just said it. He just said it.
Is there a reason that the verse gives why God led them through the wilderness?
Well, from what you are reading, it says that it was to test them to know what was in their heart.
Yeah. So,
so like my face is like, oh, he just said it. Oh, okay. That was simple enough. We can move on. So at this part of the debate, when Pine Creek was reviewing this debate, he's like, oh, looks like the open theist, like what? That was like his comment. Like He just said it. The open theist wins. The debate's over. And so it's like, okay, where do I follow up from here? He just said the thing.
Do you believe that the author thought that God had this ungenerated, non-discursive, eternal knowledge?
And so that is the follow-up is, okay, the verse says it. Did the author believe the things that the author wrote? That's the next part.
Or do you think that he thought that God actually tested them in order to know what they're going to do?
I can answer the question better if I understand something from your perspective. Do you believe that God knows all things in the present exalted?
I can answer the question better if I knew your perspective on something. Like what does my perspective mean about anything? This is a weird thing, and he doesn't. This is not the only place he does this weird thing where he's like, well, I need to know your perspective before I can answer a question. Like, I'm not asking about my perspective. I'm asking about something that's not my perspective. I'm irrelevant to this whole thing, but he'll do this thing where I think it's his way of regaining like a little bit of control and trying to refocus the debate on the topics that he wants to debate. Judge Ratley says, seems as if many Christians these days have a simple reading comprehension issues, the milk, let alone getting into rational consequences of their beliefs, whatever their beliefs are, the meat. Talk about lactose intolerance. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I think probably normal Christians are okay reading the Bible. They just think normal thoughts about the Bible, that they just read it and they believe it. And it takes a real education to pull them into this weird theology. It takes years of propaganda to train them for this.
Possibly.
And he doesn't have to. God's not a robot. And in my opening statement, I said God.
Okay, so now I'm retying back to my opening. So one of my opening phrases, God is not a formula. Matt Slick thinks God is a formula. He wants to operate with these philosophical, metaphysical formulas. God is not a formula. So I'm recalling the audience to the things that I said, to reacquaint them with my whole position, and basically say that the things that I said are going to happen, and that my position is such and such and such, and basically telling the audience that he should already know this, that I don't think... What's Maslick doing? What is he doing? What is he doing?
God is not a formula. God is a person. God has volition. God doesn't have to know what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah if he doesn't want to. And that's why the Sodom and Gomorrah incident states that God is going down to Sodom and Gomorrah to check to see if the reports which have come to them are true, and if not, he will know it.
So God is not everywhere, according to you? Is that it?
God's not a formula. Again, my opening statement, God is not a...
Refocus back to that primary statement. God is not a formula. Matt Slick wants God to be some sort of substance that he could pick apart and make formulas. If inch of space exists, then God occupies inch of space. But of course, most of these guys, unless they are unfamiliar with their own theology, they don't think that God actually occupies space. So God's omnipresence is more of a practical or a power or awareness or something that's transcendent. It's not actual physical occupation of all inches. But Matt Slick's going to pretend like that's his omnipresence.
Formula. God could be where he wants,
when he
wants. God has volition. God can do what God wants.
Yeah, I got that. I'm not saying God's a formula. I don't even know what that means, but I'm just asking you because you said God had to go down.
Well, you don't know what that means. Okay, so here's the question. Does the audience understand the things that I'm saying? That's what actually counts, because Matt Slick is going to be obtuse and he's going to not understand something. But as long as the audience gets the thing I'm saying, that it's worth it to say. Doesn't matter if Matt Slick, if the audience gets something that Matt Slick doesn't get, Matt Slick looks really dumb. And so, like, down in the comments, there's some lady like, well, I understood his position on such and such. And he answered like 5 times. It's like, why is it so hard for Matt Slick to understand this? It's like Matt Slick is exposing himself. He thinks he's doing he thinks he is like a smart person. And so the things that he believes and he says signals that the things that he believes and says are intelligent positions. but then it butts up against reality. He's trying to tell the people, hey, I'm a smart guy and I don't understand this, so that if you want to be a smart guy, you also shouldn't understand this. But it's just not working. And it might work on his little lackeys who just worship everything he says, but it just doesn't work on normal people. And they get confused why Matt Slick can't understand very simple concepts.
Down to find out was if God's everywhere, then he would already know. So I'm just wondering, what's your position? Because you're not being clear.
Yeah.
If you're going to say God,
I just told you, Matt Slick. God had to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah to see if the reports which have come to him are true. It's like, are you listening to me? It's I feel like you're not. He doesn't actually listen to the people that he interacts with. He doesn't care what they say. He doesn't care what the points are. He thinks he already knows everything, and so it's like he thinks he knows all their points already, and so he gets in this weird thing where he doesn't actually respond to or understand or incorporate anything that anyone says. He just let's pull it. Maximize. Oh, I get max. We're gonna make that a little bit bigger. Oh, okay, Matt Slick. Okay.
God's omnipresent, then he's already down there. He would already know, unless you're saying that God's down there, but he's just not knowing what they're doing. Then he's got to go back to talk to somebody else and say, we got to go find out what they're doing. So this is why my question is relevant.
He's getting so it's like, I answered your question. All you had to do was use a little bit of listening comprehension, and you would have had your answer.
Is God omnipresent? Is he everywhere?
When the Bible has verses about God's reach being...
Okay, so here's where I'm heading off his proof texting. And so basically what's going to happen, what he wants to happen is me to say no, and then he's going to pull out a verse, oh, God fills heaven and earth, or something like that. And then I look like I'm contradicting the Bible. So I'm preempting him. And I'm saying these verses are about God's power and God's reach. And he doesn't like that because now because I introduced his proof text before him and I gave a possible and probable reading and interpretation of those proof texts, now they're not his proof texts anymore. He doesn't get to use them to bludgeon me. And yet it tells the audience that I'm aware that these things exist and that it's unconvincing.
Everywhere. That's about his power able to extend to all those places. That's not about him occupying our toilets or every square inch of everything that ever exists.
Yeah, so that's a good imagery thing. So it's, if you're saying God occupies every square inch, you're saying he inhabits our toilets. It's a ridiculous concept. It's a gross concept. It's not a biblical concept. God's not occupying our toilets or anything like that. And so basically, for him to affirm this type of omnipresence where God's in every square inch, he has to affirm that. It's going to not make him look very good to the audience. And the audience is going to say, either these verses mean God's power reaches everywhere, or it means God occupies the toilet. And the audience is like, well, probably the reach one. These are the only two options they've been given so far. So they're probably going to like, it's probably the power one. It's not the occupying the toilet one. That's, if I'm given those two options, it's probably the other one.
Even classical theism denies that God occupies any space. They think omnipresence means that God is outside of time, outside of space, and doesn't have relation to the material world. But the biblical concept is God's power can reach everywhere.
Okay, I didn't ask if his power could. I just asked, is God everywhere?
In the sense that his power can reach everywhere, yes.
No,
in the Bible,
because that's it's a potential. So is there any place in existence in the universe of which God is not aware?
It could be God's not a formula. He's a person. And so if he doesn't want to be aware of something, he's not forced to be aware of it.
Okay, so what Matt Slick is fishing for is hard and fast absolutes, which then he could use to bludgeon me. But if God's not a formula and God doesn't work with hard and fast absolutes, and God has volition and like God's omniscience is a rule of thumb, and if God's omnipresence is a rule of thumb, or if any of these things are hyperbolic, or if there's exceptions to these things, like he doesn't want a system that allows those types of exceptions. But like the Bible defies systematic theology in a way that you can't have these hard and fast rules, and they just don't work with the biblical data that exists.
So so then if he's not aware of it, he's choosing not to be aware of something. So wouldn't you have to know about it in order to know not to know about it?
Our data set is the Bible, and so we could read Genesis and take a look at what it says.
Look, I'm asking you a specific question because it's a premise
Right.
that you're working from. You're the one who brought up Sodom and Gomorrah and the idea of having to go down and check it out. Okay, great. So I'm just asking you a question. If we're going to look at the text, I want to be able to look and reason as God said. Let us reason.
And another thing he's trying to do is he's trying to make me give broad claims about my views rather than the views of the biblical author. So this is like your view is this. But I want to talk about what the views of the biblical authors were. And it's not necessary that the biblical authors agreed with each other on every single point, everywhere and always. That's not necessary, but he feels like he's the be all end all of his own systematic theology. And so asking him what he believes is the same thing as asking what the Bible teaches. That's what his mind is. Like, my beliefs are irrelevant, especially to this debate. My it's not about me, it's not about my belief, it's about the biblical authors. And like, he's having a hard time with that concept because of course he's his own systematic theology.
Together. In fact, in Acts 17:17, Paul, dialegomai, he dialogued with reason and went back and forth and did this. I'm asking you to do this. In fact, Paul the Apostle quoted Epimenides, Menon.
Yeah, on King With Me says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. And so Proverbs 15:3. So I had an article on Reality is Not Optional about God's omnipresence. And one of the most insightful comments that I had was someone who found the article, and they posted about how, like in the ancient world, eyes are spies. And so like, let's say you're watching Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and they say the queen has eyes everywhere. Eyes and ears everywhere. So what does that mean? And typically it means there's a system of informants. And so very easily and very likely and very probable, Proverbs 15:3 is about God has angels who watch and search the world. And you see this idea of angels watching and searching the world. You see it in Job, where the Satan is searching and testing the world. You see it with the 7 eyes that roam the world. And was that Hosea? I think Hezekiah, Hosea. I'll have to look it up. But there's 7 eyes that roam the world. And so eyes seem to be this idea, maybe like Jesus talking that each kid has their angel looking out for them, that the world is filled with God's eyes and ears, informants who report back to him on the doings of the world. The prayers are reported to God, as you see in, I think it's even Barnabas, the book of Barnabas. You have angels reporting prayers to God, like you have in 1 Kings 22 and things like that. And so that's one thing we need to consider, is that even proof text like that, it's like it might mean something radically different than our first impressions, because we're looking at it with maybe the wrong lens. We're trying to systematize things, or we're trying to make it into some sort of absolute statement. But there might be better, more probable readings that we haven't thought of because we're not in the right mindset for those things.
And Erastus, pagan philosophers, he brought it up himself to discuss things with people. And you sit here and you condemn the idea of me even using what is called philosophy, which really is just logic that I'm asking you about. And then you say God's not a formula.
Oh, he's so very mad because, okay, so I think he's realizing that I'm talking Bible, and every time he starts talking formulas, I call him out on it. And so this is really getting to him. He's understanding that if we go down this path in this entire debate, guess what? He's the philosophy guy. I'm the Bible guy. It's not going to look good. And so he needs to do a save. He's doing like a Hail Mary. Oh, Paul talked about these pagan philosophers, and so I could be a pagan philosopher too. I was like, I could affirm Plotinus or something like that. Yeah, sure. I hope that strategy works for you, Matt Slick.
I've asked you about God's exhaustive existence, about free will. You don't even know these things. I don't even think you understand what the hypostatic union is recording Christ. Because
I'm just laughing at him. Oh, I gotta make the picture bigger. I'm just laughing at him. He's making these claims, and it's so like, it's the great thing about this debate is we're both on screen. He doesn't get to make this little rant without him being seriously undermined by my demeanor. Do I look like a guy who doesn't understand these things? Is that what he comes off really bad in this debate because he makes all these claims and he's laughed at in real time for these claims. He doesn't look like he knows what he's talking about.
There's a significant reason I was asking as it relates to free will, as it relates to God. You keep dodging and you don't seem to want to answer direct questions.
I want to talk about the biblical text.
So here's a direct question
about the Bible.
I'm dying. It's like, yeah, I just want to talk about the Bible because guess what? He's the philosophy guy. I'm the Bible guy. Every single part of this interaction is reinforcing that one principle. I'm the Bible guy. He's the philosophy guy. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like the way this is going.
Yes, the Bible says in Psalm 139, 7-9, that God is everywhere. Do you affirm that God is in? Do you affirm or do you deny that God is present in all places and all time in the universe?
The biblical authors don't think so. And so in Genesis 18, he says this. He says, because the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down now to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know. You can't just like verse proof text where you grab one half a verse in somewhere else in the Bible and then think that that author is talking about your special metaphysics. They're just not talking about it. We talked about a ton of different examples in my opening statement of phrases, normal phrases used about human beings. Guess what? Mankind doesn't change. Mankind sees everything under the sun. The writer of Ecclesiastes has seen everything under the sun. King David knows everything.
And so I need to get the audience to start thinking like this is without contextual analysis, you're not going to be able to know what a verse is saying. And so what he thinks is his metaphysics that support his point. I started out by undermining it because I knew where he was going to go. And I knew that the audience would be predispositioned to thinking that these are verses about God occupying square inches in our toilet. And so I had to give them an alternate possibility, which I could just point to. And I pointed to it over and over and over. And guess what? Then he doubled down again about God inhabiting our toilets. It's like, I just got to shut this down. I need to point out to the audience that this is not how words work. These are not how phrases work. This is not how reading comprehension works. I've already explained this. I've showed this in various other scenarios. Whatever the verse is saying, it's not your theology. You have to prove that it's saying your theology. It's just there's alternative, possible, probable explanations.
Thing on earth. So what do these phrases mean? And context is the only way to know. And so you can't take a little phrase and then claim it means your theology. It's begging the question. That's the begging the question fallacy.
No, I haven't committed any fallacies like that. You don't know logic very well. So God is limited.
What are you talking about? You don't know. Like he gets to just say whatever he wants, like without any basis whatsoever. He just gets to, if he thinks it in his head, he just says it. Like, okay. The thing is, like, the audience gets to be the judge, and they see me making rational points about things, and then Matt Slick, they see him just trying to hand wave it, and so it's like audiences change interactions quite dramatically, and so I don't think Matt Slick was prepared for an audience-centric discussion. He's always appealing to the audience. So like him interacting with anyone, it's not about the person he's interacting with. It's about his sycophants who he's feeding lines to, his sycophants who he's feeding the doctrine to, and argument styles. It's like it's not for the person he's interacting with. That's why he consistently misunderstands, misrepresents, and doesn't even incorporate what the other person says. The same points that I made to him before in his life, he brings up arguments, his original arguments, as if I had never explained these objections to him, as if I've never responded to him in his life. And he might not remember me. Like he interacts with a lot of people. He might not remember me, but he should, if he's intellectually honest, actually deal with some pushback on some of his ideas that he's gotten from time to time, and not talk as if there's been nothing. But he's not an honest individual.
In your view, are you saying God is limited in his presence, in his scope in existence?
Not my view.
And so he uses emotionally charged language. Are you saying God is limited? And so like, I need to pit. It's not about me versus Maslick. It's Maslick versus the biblical authors. And so if I say it's not me, it's the biblical authors, and Maslick can't say, oh, they believed in the limited God, because that undermines exactly what he's going for. And then he doesn't get to poison the well against me anymore with like, oh, you're limiting God. Oh, it's so terrible. You're limiting. He has to fight against the actual biblical authors. And I get to redirect the whole audience to the thing that I just read, versus Matt Slick's moralizing. Oh, you're limiting God. I like, let's just read the Bible. Let's just turn to the Bible and read and see what those authors believed. You could criticize them all you want. I don't care. So that's what's happening here. Is I'm redirecting to the Bible, and I'm subverting his poisoning the well, his loaded words, non-central fallacy that he's using here.
View, the author of Genesis 18's view.
So that's what you're saying. So the answer is yes. So,
and I'm just looking straight at the camera. It's like, not my view. It's the author of Genesis 18 view. And I'm just like staring straight at him. Like, and then he gets real mad. Okay. We're going to try these arrow buttons that they're telling me to use to rewind a little bit.
18's view.
So that's what you're saying. So the answer is yes. So God is not everywhere. Okay. And so then he has to go learn. All right.
That's what Genesis 18 reads. I could read it again.
I can read it again. And so I'm redirecting to the text again. Like, he hasn't dealt with the text. And I'm making this painfully obvious that, like, he has not talked about what the text says. And so I just keep, every single answer is just pulling back to the text. So I'm the text guy. He's the philosophy guy. That's what's happening in the debate. And so the audience is getting earful of this framing. I'm the Bible. He's philosophy.
Yeah.
Not what you say. That's your interpretation of things. Because I can show you where 1 John 3:20, God knows all things. I can show where he decrees all things from all existence.
Man knows all things.
He is so dumb that he didn't listen to my opening statement, in which I specifically criticized and mocked him for using 1 John 3:20. Like, it didn't register in his mind that I mocked him about it. And I told an entire story which made him look ridiculous on that verse that he's using right now to prove text. Like, he's barely cognizant about what's going on in this discussion. Like, it's what the things I say do not register in his mind. He's like having a debate with someone else of his own mental construct. And so it's I think I refocus. I think I point back to my mocking of him about this.
Well, we've been over this. You and I have talked about this.
Well, that's good. So I'm going to ask you again, because this is important. I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to just clarify for what it is you hold to, for your open theist position. Do you affirm or do you deny that in order for man to have free will, which you can't deny, you can't even define, that for man to have...
I laugh at him again. I'm laughing at his face when he says, oh, you can't define it. It's like, there's nothing about me can't define it. That's just you. You refuse to define it too. So what are you talking about, Matt Sluck? What are you talking about?
Free will choices, that God can't know what those choices are going to be. Is that what you affirm, or do you not affirm it?
1 John 2:20, man knows all things. You have the anointing and you know all things. Again, proof text trumping or just quoting something out of context and pretending it means your theology is not acceptable. This is not a biblical dialogue. Show from the context why the author has your particular interpretation in mind. You can't just assume these things. This is a dialogue.
It's not much of a dialogue.
Oh, so that's the funny thing. So, like, what he does is he wants to throw out some quick references, pretend these references mean whatever he wants, move on, and badger you with questions. then he'll get very angry. It was very common for him. He'll get very angry if you go back and try to fight all the basic assumptions that he preloaded in this question that he demands an answer for right away. You answered this question. No, you just talked a whole bunch and made a bunch of false claims that we should address one by one before I get to your stupid question, because that's the whole premise of your question. You don't get to just talk a bunch and make a bunch of false claims and then demand an answer to some other random question. He does it.
So I'm not pretending. You call me a liar and said I'm pretending. I wish you would stop giving me these things. I've asked you specifically for definitions, and you've not given me these definitions.
Why would I define something that's not like talked about in the Bible? Free will is a modern category that we're using. There's no other option to the biblical authors. We all have volition. God doesn't know what mankind's going to do before he does it, and he regrets making mankind and destroys them all.
Okay,
that's
so God
God
doesn't know what man will do.
Right.
Okay, and so because of that, God doesn't know. So is it because man's free will has to be free? Otherwise, the standard thing I've heard, let me rephrase it. The standard thing I've heard from open theists is that.
Okay, so yeah, I think a lot of open theists are doing open theism a huge disfavor to argue in these terms. It's like, as soon as you're arguing for open theism in the terms of, well, in order for it to be free, man had to be made with free will, and then, or else they like what are you doing? Why are you doing this little complicated thing? Like, God made the world, and it's like it didn't seem that there's some active decision between making man with free will or making him a fated robot. It doesn't even seem to be a biblical concern that God was like, thought that maybe I might create a world of robots. He just built people who he can interact with. It's not a consideration. There's no other option but free will.
In order for man to be truly free, God can't know his free will choices. Otherwise, he's not free to make a different choice when it comes time to make that choice. Do you agree with that?
No, I told everyone that you're going to call me a Mormon and bring up Mormonism, and that happened. So I knew your free will choices before you made them. It's not hard. Normal people do it all the time. This is how we operate in the world. We know the future. You even
yeah, okay, so I'm undermining his categories. I'm undermining this point he's trying to make, because he's trying to Moat and Bailey. Moat and Bailey is where you make an undefensible claim, and then when called on it, you retreat to a more defensible claim. And so the undefensible claim that he wants to defend is that all future events can be known with 100% infallible certainty, but also people can have free will. And so now he's going to retreat to, we kind of know what people can do in the future, and then they do it, and they still have free will. And then he's going to pull back and say that's going to show that God can also do that with a different type of knowledge that's completely different and operates completely different, that's unfalsifiable and fatalistic. And so, it is a defensible claim that people can know free will decisions of other people in the future. Our normal definition of knowledge, our normal definition of free will, these things work. And so it's good to call them on it rather than play with their categories or play with your own categories that you're trying to build. Just undermine it and say, yeah, this thing can happen. Then they have to specify. Now Matt Slick has to retreat and explain the difference between what I'm saying, me knowing free will actions, and what he's actually trying to defend.
Told me when we were talking in Denver that Jason, the camera guy, that you knew that he was going to go home that night because you understand that the definition of knowledge includes this fallible correspondence or something, that with something that happens. Human beings know the future regularly. God knows the future regularly. I listed about 4 different ways where how God knows things, and knows things especially about the future. God knows because he sees, he knows because he predicts, he knows because he's going to do stuff. I know things about the future. Someone in the comments there made a false accusation that I had a video about Trump winning the 2020 election. The video was actually about, there was a predicted in which Trump would retain office in 2019. And I was absolutely correct in what I claimed about that. So I knew the future, something I have no control of. I just was able to predict the way things were going.
Is it the case or not the case? I'm asking you a specific question. Is it the case or not the case that in order for human free will to be free, God cannot know in advance what specific choices we'll make?
God knows a lot of stuff we're going to do. I know a lot of stuff we're going to do. So here's the thing.
You're not answering the question.
There is a conflation. There's a conflation. And what happens, it's a bait and switch, a Mote and Bailey, in which you want one standard of knowledge when we're talking about how people normally know the future, but then you bait and switch it. You switch it with a different type of knowledge that God has. And the type of knowledge you want to ascribe to God is unfalsifiable, eternal, ungenerated, independent, non-discursive knowledge that somehow has all truth values of all future truth propositions that infallibly will occur. Yeah, if there is some sort of truth value list like that exists, fatalism is true. But that's not the type of knowledge that God has of human free decisions. That's not the type of knowledge you and I, you knew Jason was going to go home because you have knowledge of the future. I have knowledge of the future. It's not.
I just dismantled his entire argument. He doesn't know what to do. Time to zoom in again. Look at your face, Matt Slick. Oh, man.
Not hard.
Is it the
So that was teaching mode again, and so the voice change, it's less jovial. It's just very much to the point. It's stating things factually and tactfully. It's the teaching mode, and that tone of voice, it's appropriate for that that interaction. And guess what? I look like I'm the one who's doing the teaching here, and he looks like the student when that happens. And it's something that people can understand. People can listen to it, and it makes sense, and it resonates with them. So there's the time for the laughing mode, and then there's the time for the teaching mode.
Case or not the case that in order for human free will to be free, God cannot know in advance what specific choices we'll make?
No, I just told you God can know the things we're going to do. God knew what my opening statement was going to be. He knew what color shirt I was going to wear. God knows the future.
Oh, he knows the future. Does he know does he also know all of our free will choices?
I'm undermining him. He wants hard and fast things that he can attack. So he doesn't want to deal with nuance. He doesn't want to do with normal use of words. He wants to use the non-central fallacy. So he does not know how to interact with someone affirming the things that he's saying.
Why would he want to know that? Not in the Bible.
I didn't ask if he wanted to. I didn't ask if he wanted to. I said, does he also know all of our free will choices?
Well, the writer of Genesis 6 didn't think so, because he eventually regrets his own action in creating man.
Okay, and so the answer is no? The answer is
the biblical authors don't think so, so no.
No, you're begging the question when you assume the biblical author means exactly what you mean.
You haven't talked
you're the
about
one,
Genesis 6.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what it is you believe.
Look at it.
I understand.
I brought it up like 50 times. He never wants to turn there and talk about it.
I've written a great deal on open theism. I've talked to many open theists. I understand the position. So I'm trying to find out what your particular view is. So let me define what free will is so that we can have a discussion around that, because it's going to be important pretty soon. I'm going to show you the problems in open theism. Free will is the ability to make a choice that's consistent with your nature, that's not forced upon you. Self-generated.
I was doing my smile and then like shaking my head no at the same time here that I was on screen during the debate. Like, what are you talking about? That's absolute nonsense. And so it's so funny. So I guess my body's programmed for this reaction to this silly definition.
You can do it. Now, do you agree or do you not agree with that definition?
That's really weird. God doesn't have access to the future choices of the people in Genesis 6. And so whatever definition of free will is consistent with that is fine by me.
So do you agree with the definition of free will or not?
Yeah, if you're using it in the sense that the volition to do something originates from inside ourselves and is not external, and it actually has to originate from inside ourselves. It can't be this Richard Dawkins free will in which everything is based on priors. He thinks that people don't have free will. We're just tricked into free will. We all are doing something fated. There's an eternally fated future because everything is based on its antecedents. And so, no, in that view, things are fated. But if people are the generators of their own ideas and choices, like I don't have the free will to fly, but that's just like a physical strain. If I could, I could think about things. If Jesus could say, "Not my will, but yours be done," we know that people have wills.
Did Jesus have free will?
Yeah, he prayed to
Okay.
God, probably forego the crucifixion multiple times.
Yes, so Jesus had free will. Jesus also said he could do nothing of his own initiative, John 5:30, John 8:28.
What did
So
he mean by that?
he also said that he
I said, what did he mean by that? And Matt's like pauses, and Matt's like doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to talk about B. He thinks that prima facie, just reading the verse, I should shut up. It means that Jesus didn't have free will. So I got to call him out, and I got to press the issue. I need the audience to understand that he's just reading his assumptions into these verses, or else these verses sound like his proof texts. And so it's the goal right now is to undermine his proof texting.
came down from heaven not to do his own will, but the will of the Father who sent him, John 6:38.
Right.
So here's a question. Here's a question. If Jesus had free will, how is it that he could only do what the will of the Father was?
He's talking about what he's doing, not his capabilities. That's begging the question. What does he mean in context of those phrases? So who's his audience, who he's talking to? What do they believe? And what is he communicating to them of substance?
I asked, if Jesus had free will, how could he only do what the Father's will was?
Right. A lot of people talk like that pretty normally within the Bible, and it's not this fatalistic concept. And so language doesn't work where there's these hard and fast rules where like if you can only do something and not another thing, then you're fated. Like the people within the Bible are said to not be able to change. People are said to nothing that the person people want can be denied them. People are omnipotent, I guess, in your views, but language doesn't work like.
Okay, so there is the case in Genesis in which God comes down to the Tower of Babel and he says, "Hey, look at these people. Nothing that they want they is beyond their capability. Like they can do anything." And so this is not an omniscience claim, and it's not like a capability claim, like they could phase through solid objects, or maybe it includes the potential ability to come up with technology to phase through objects, but probably not. But that's just how language works. And so someone says, "Can I go to the bathroom?" That doesn't mean that's not like the teacher says no or yes. It's not like the teacher is enabling them physically. Now they have the ability to go to the bathroom or not. It's just how language works generally. that in that case, it's just asking permission to do something. And so if Jesus says, I can only do the will of the Father, it probably just means that's what he's intent on doing. He's not going to do something else. As it doesn't mean his whatever weird metaphysics. And so he's using non-central fallacy. He's using begging the question. He's not doing textual analysis. He's not showing us why it means this thing. But it sounds on prima facie to the audience that he has actual proof text, but he really hasn't demonstrated that. So my goal is I don't have any counterproof texts pulled up offhand talking about what people can and can't do that shows how those words specifically aren't commonly used in the way he's trying to use it right now. But I probably should do that for it's pretty easy to do. They got a proof text and they say, "Hey, see this here?" You could just go to the King James with the little words on it for like the Greek and the Hebrew, and then you could right click and you could search all, and you could find parallel verses who use it, and people read it like a normal human being would read those verses. And then you could just pull those verses out and say, "Hey, here's how the word's used in this verse. What does it mean here?" And then they have to actually present some sort of positive case that the word's not being used in the same way in their proof text that it is in the verse that they're reading like a normal person. But Matt Slick wants proof texts. He wants word thinking. He doesn't want to engage with textual analysis.
Like that. So you have to look at who's being talked to, what the specific point being made is, and is it rhetorical? Is a rhetorical flourish? Is it hyperbole? Is it idiomatic? What's happening in context? And it's not metaphysics. within the Bible, a lot of people like to pretend the Bible's about metaphysics, but it's just not. I just read you like 15 different verses which talk about mankind knowing all things. And so whatever you just quoted 1 John 3:20 as God knowing all things, 1 John 2:20 is the same phrase used about man. So you need to actually go to these verses and show that they're talking anything about your metaphysics. They're just not. It's just normal language.
So, okay, I'm going to assume that from what your open theism position is, I'm going to show you a huge problem on your position.
So here's where he gives up entirely, trying to like bait and switch me, and so he's just going to make his whole argument without me involved in his argument. It's real funny.
A huge problem. Why I believe that your position is seriously heretical. Among the evidence that you're not able to understand who Christ is in the truth of his hypothetical.
You just don't understand. It's something you don't get. Maybe I could teach you. Yeah, me and you, we could talk. I could teach you all about it.
Union and communication of the properties.
Paul didn't believe in hypostatic union. He believed that the divine dwelt physically. The fullness of God.
You got to be
physical.
Yes, but you see, there's logical ramifications of this. Otherwise, you won't have an atoning sacrifice. So I can get into that. So here's the thing.
Don't get into your stupid, idiotic atonement theories, Matt Slick. Don't do it. We're going to have to skip that part. I do not want to listen to his stupid atonement theories again.
So I'm assuming from your position that God did not know every free will choice of every individual. So he did not know which individuals would actually be born and what sins they would commit in
his stupid atonement theories.
The future, right?
Not exhaustively. We had this discussion before, you and I. No, God did not know that the entire mankind was going to rebel in Genesis 6, and then he decided.
So I point out practical examples in the Bible. So this is brilliant of me, past me. Brilliant job past me. I go back to the Genesis 6 because that it's a good proof text to undermine a whole medley of his arguments, and it's one that he's been avoiding this entire time. And so it works on so many levels. And on this atonement thing, it super works because it's all about sin. It's about the whole world sinning and God regretting his own actions and making man because of that sin. So if there's an eternal list, I'm gonna make Matt Slick big again. I'm gonna make him big again. Oh, Matt Slick. He's losing it. He's losing it. Oh, when did this debate occur? Manager asked. 1 year ago. This is the retrospective, where we haven't touched this for a while, but this is the retrospective of who's saying what and why, and to what my thought process was in some of these responses, and how these arguments flowed and worked. Oh, Matt Slick. Oh, we're gonna hit play.
To wipe them out. Then he had another change of mind. All mankind could have been entirely gone forever. He had another change of mind and saved alive one man and his family. So the biblical authors did not think in these categories.
So 1 Peter 2:24 says he himself bore our sin in his.
He just ignores everything I say. I talk for a long time and I make all these points about the biblical text and what the biblical text says. And then he just ignores them, and then he moves on to whatever he wants to talk about. And so I think it looks really bad on him. I think it does. And I think the audience also notices this.
His body on the cross that we might die to sin and live to right.
Beehive says this debate was the highlight of my year on YouTube. It was pretty. This is why, like, so I don't actually challenge people to debates. I'm not going like, you should debate me about X, Y, Z, whatever. Like every debate I've been a part of, like someone's reached out to me and like invited me to come debate whatever subject. Like these debate invitations have dried up as of this last year. They're afraid of what I might do. I'm a wild card. It might go bad for them, but that's fine. I don't need to be like debating everyone. I'm not running around debate me on whatever.
Righteousness, for by his stripes you are healed. So Jesus was crucified 2,000 years ago. Did he bear your sins in his body on the cross?
American soldiers died for my freedom in World War II. It's not an argument. You're begging the question. See, language works like that, where American soldiers don't even have to know me, don't even have to know my freedom set, and they could still die for my freedoms in World War II.
This triggered the Calvies to no end, and so Matt Slick fed them this line that this is so terrible. You can't compare Christ's atoning sacrifice to troops dying for our freedoms. And they ran with it in the comments. It's like all these Calvinists are. It's like they don't understand analogies, and they don't understand like how language works and operates, and they think it's so atrocious to make an analogy. It's like, are you people like brain dead? It's so I've been telling a lot of people privately. I was just like, these Gnostics, the Gnostics had this idea that not all human beings had souls. It had the there's a class of people that exist that are like animal people that don't actually like process. Like, these Calvinists are getting me to believe in Gnosticism. The more that they argue like this, like the guy who came in here in the first part of our chat talking about how if God determined one thing, that he determines all things, and the burden of proofs on the open theists to prove that God doesn't determine all things. If God determines one thing, it's like, I just said, I eat some things. That doesn't mean I eat all things. And like, he couldn't understand. He doesn't have the rational processing. It's like, why am I interacting with someone who doesn't? It's like, so maybe the Gnostics are onto something. Maybe there's some like animal people who just operate on an animal level, and like they don't have rational reasoning skills. I don't know. Maybe I'm just throwing that out there, kind of in jest.
And so you can't have an idiosyncratic way of interpreting language and then insist your metaphysics are being taught by that language. You just can't do it. You need to show from the context why your interpretation of those sentences are the
teaching mode voice again.
Correct one. And you're not doing that. You're quoting half verses out of context. Go to the context, show why you think that the author's talking.
Hudson says this debate has aged well. Yeah, like there's a few comments on this debate where someone's like, I first watched this debate and I thought it was so terrible, but then I went out and I watched a bunch more Matt Slick stuff, and I realized that this debate was actually really on point and really needed to happen. And so like people change their mind maybe the second and third viewing. But I think initially it was very positive. I got a lot of positive feedback. Maybe more than 50% was positive feedback on how this debate turned out. And all the negative feedback was like ideologues, like the Calvinists. There's some open theists who are like, you shouldn't be doing that. It's like, you could do whatever, do your own debates. It's fine. It doesn't matter. But this debate had to happen. Matt Slick needed to be called out in this way. Publicly, he needed to be humiliated. He's just a bad person.
Your metaphysics. They just aren't.
Spartan says, I was listening to this debate. It's really weird how that happens. Like, I'll be talking to someone, or maybe I'll read a certain passage in the Bible, a certain book of the Bible, and it's like the same day, like those topics will come up. It's almost like there's this like force of nature that kind of forces issues or waves of thought among disparate people.
So I quoted you the verse, he himself bore our sin in his body on the cross. Do you believe he bore our sin in his body on the cross?
Right. And American soldiers died for my freedom. They sacrificed their bodies for my freedom.
Do you believe that Jesus, I'm asking about Jesus.
He thinks by emphasizing Jesus, like his point has like extra weight. Jesus, I'm talking about Jesus here. Like, oh man, the Calvinists got real triggered. Like, they got idiotic atonement theories. I don't want to talk about your stupid atonement theories. There's 100 atonement theories out there, and yours is just one of them. And there's nothing to recommend it. It's like, why are we talking about your dumb atonement theory?
Just out of scripture. Do you believe that Jesus bore your sin in his body on the cross?
What in context makes you think the author has your special atonement theories in mind?
Yeah, I'm going to let myself.
What in context?
I'm just reading the text. And
Oh, I think this is one of the places where one of the female commenters, like, I understood what he's saying. How is this hard for Matt Slick? And so we're going to skip forward because I don't want to go through him. Matt Slick thinks that by just reading like a couple verses before and a couple verses after means that now he's done contextual analysis, and now somehow magically it means whatever he says. Like he like literally does not understand what I'm asking for textual context that reinforces his interpretation. He literally doesn't not understand what that is. I don't think he's acting dumb in this case. Maybe he is, but I don't need to listen to him reread this.
And I'll get to 24 here, and I'll read 25 also at the end of the chapter. For you,
no, that's not how contextual analysis works.
He's not a propitiatory atoning sacrifice. Jesus is God in flesh, John 1:1 and verse 14. So I'm asking you, in relation to Jesus, according to
Jesus
this,
is God in flesh.
according
You just
Okay,
denied
so
it.
he opened me up. It's like, I don't want to talk about stupid atonement theories. And so he just said Jesus is God in flesh. It gave me an opening. And now I'll redirect. I'll talk about something that I actually want to talk about, is his denial of Semitic theology in which the material can be divine. You have divine dirt, and you take off your sandals because Moses, you are on divine dirt. This is holy land. There's divine places on earth. And so the divine could be physical. Paul says, I knew a guy who was taken up to third heaven with in the body of spirit. I don't know which, because either is the case. This is how they thought about the world. It wasn't in Platonic categories. And so I would like to talk about that, because that's him versus the Bible, and it absolutely destroys like he can't function without whatever special Trinity models he has and metaphysical models. And like, he's never had to interact with someone on these issues because they're too obscure that nobody knows what he believes on these dumb issues about metaphysical intermixing of the divine and the physical. Nobody knows, because nobody debates these things. And so he's never had to interact with someone on this issue. And so now he does. Ad hoc. He's not prepared. He doesn't have arguments for this. And he has to explain to an audience who he's going to look like a crazy person to.
according to this, according to the
You just denied
scriptures,
Jesus was God in flesh. It just happened. Was the human part of Jesus God?
dude. Okay, now I have to correct you. I'm sorry, but I got to do this. Jesus has two distinct.
And so then I get a call back. I get a call back to when he denied that the human part of Jesus was God, and it's so funny. And we got to make this big again. Make this big again. Matt Slick is just absolutely losing it, because now I'm challenging him. I'm basically calling him like denial of the Trinity is like the big thing where I was like, oh, you're a heretic if you deny whatever Trinity model. And I'm taking him to task. He looks like a heretic. I'm saying, you don't believe this verse in which God became man, and he doesn't know how to respond. And he can't respond because it takes complicated mental gymnastics in order to explain how his model of the universe works with these types of verses.
Distinct natures, a divine nature and a human nature. John 1:1 verse 14. Would you let me finish, please? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Verse
Spartan says, it's funny that we know what the physical is, but spirit is one of the most undefined terms ever used by Christians. Yeah.
14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Colossians 2:9, for in him dwells all the fullness of deity in bodily form. I can go into Philippians 2:5-8, talking about the emptying of Christ. I can go to Hebrews.
So now he's just like, so he's got a lot of verses memorized, and yeah, he does. He's able to rattle them off just like this. I'm not very good with references. So usually I have to just like Google a phrase, and then because I'll remember verses but not references. So if I know a reference, that means that I've just used that verse quite a lot. But he's very good with this rattling. But the thing is, like, it's just shotgun proof texting. None of these verses have anything to do with what he's saying. And in fact, he just quoted one that undermines his belief. He just quoted Colossians 2.
There's 1:8. But the Son, he says, thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Jesus has two distinct natures, a divine nature and a human nature. We call this.
Hebrews says that your throne is forever. How does that have anything to do with anything you're arguing, Matt Slick? Like like he rattles these off fast. He's trying to create confusion in the audience. He's trying to say, hey, audience, I know the Bible really well. If I rattle this verse off fast enough, and if I say it fast enough, you're going to think that this verse has anything at all to do with whatever argument I'm making. It doesn't. It's like, what are you doing? That none of these things prove anything that you're saying. You're just quoting a bunch of verses. Like, it's insane to me. And it's all a show for the audience. He's not debating me. He's trying to influence audience perception is what's happening.
The hypostatic union, because Jesus said such things as, I am thirsty, appealing to his human nature. I'll be with you always, Matthew 20:18, dealing with his divine nature. The one person of Christ claimed the attributes of both natures. This is called the hypostatic union and the communication of the properties, where the attributes of both natures are ascribed to the single person. This is right out of Scripture. I can teach on it for hours. I've been doing it for years and years. I know the topic.
You just read evidence against what you claimed. You said that Jesus was God bodily. You denied that. You think you don't listen. In your own words, the divine cannot be physical. That's a Platonist metaphysics. The semantic mindset is that there's overlap in the divine.
The Semitic, not the semantic. The Semitic. The Semitic mindset. But I'm taking him to task. I'm laughing at him. I'm undermining his evidence.
There's not a chasm. We don't.
You couldn't argue your way out of a wet Platonic bag. Look,
like, what is this? What? Who put together that phrase in your mind, Matt? Like, was like a boomer? Like, he's probably like a boomer. It's like, what are you could argue yourself out of a wet Platonic bag. What are you going for? Who are you trying to impress people with? Is that? It's. So I do feel sorry for Matt Slick. So he just like live streamed the other day, and it's just like 40 views. Like nobody's watching him. He's phased out of the internet. He was lucky enough to get in the internet soon enough that he's able to get domains set up and become a fairly go-to place for basic biblical Christianity stuff. He got some Google rankings that still nets him plenty of income. His carm.org seems to get a lot of clicks still, but like his live streams get no interaction. Nobody's watching this stuff because I think people have seen through him. He's just not intelligent. And the more that he interacts with other people, the more these things get exposed. And so you feel sorry for him. It's like he's doing these. Nobody's talking to him. Nobody's interested in the things he's saying. And it does feel on some level. I feel sorry for the man.
I'm going to tell you something here. Categories deal with the ontos. The human nature is different than the divine nature.
You're making up categories.
You don't have the properties of one communicated to the.
I'm not letting him finish. I just pointing at when he gives me a pause, I undermine the thing he just said, and then he keeps going on as if I didn't undermine the thing he just said.
It doesn't work that way. They're communicated to the person. The divine nature is separate from the human nature. They are separate ontologically. They're separate by nature and essence with properties. So the attributes of both are ascribed to the one person of Christ. This is basic Christian theology, which apparently
you
do not know about.
I said that you would talk in almost exclusively Platonistic terms, and you're doing
You don't even understand what Platonism is. You don't even know what that is.
The Bible doesn't talk like this.
Yes, it does.
The Bible talks like this? Oh man, he's just talking weird things about like nature and stuff like that. And like the Bible talks like this? Where if the Bible talked like it, he would be giving us those Bible verses. The Bible doesn't talk like this.
You guys, let's focus on the topic. Open theism in the Bible. All right, go with your question.
Wow. So what does it mean when it says he bore our sins in his body on the cross? What does it mean? Tell everybody what the scripture means. Tell it what it means.
yeah, there in Israel, there's the yearly sacrifice that just covers everyone's sins. It's a blanket covering, just like the American troops died for our sins. It's just generic. This is the normal way language works, and so it doesn't have your
So
specific metaphysics in mind. There's not an amount of philosophy you could throw at the question to make it mean your metaphysics. It's just not there in the text.
so you relate Jesus' sacrifice to a soldier of war.
Yeah, such
Interesting.
outrage.
All right.
It's an
So
analogy. You
yeah,
can look into the text and explain why contextually my analogy is incorrect, but you haven't done that. You've just philosophized about my analogy being incorrect. And so,
Okay, so yeah, so I'm reinforcing what I've been reinforcing throughout this entire debate. I'm reinforcing he's the philosopher. He just cares about philosophy, and this philosophy is antithetical to the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk this philosophy whatsoever, and I'm the guy who wants to talk about the Bible. And so every chance I get to emphasize this, I'm going to take it. And every time he's going to give me one of these stupid philosophical rants about nonsense, it's a perfect opportunity, because then the audience sees, hey, he just talked a whole bunch. He threw a bunch of words together. I didn't hear very much Bible. And then this guy is telling me that there was no Bible in there and it was all philosophy. Yeah, that sounds about right. And so they get immediate feedback, and the audience gets immediate prompting on how to interpret this interaction. And he's talking philosophy. This philosophy is not in the Bible. The biblical authors don't talk like this. And they say, hey, that's right. And he's been doing this all the entire debate. Every time he opens his mouth, it's the same thing. And so I just continually reinforce this one point over and over.
so there's no reason for the audience to accept your reading of this.
David says you can just compare anything to anything else. Yeah, so it's really funny. There's the phrase like you can't compare apples and oranges. Like what, you can only compare two identical things. Like a comparison is to illustrate a concept. So a comparison is not an argument. An analogy is not an argument. Scott Adams writes about this in one of his books, his book before Win Bigly. But he writes about how analogies aren't actually arguments. They're good for introducing concepts. And so, like, I introduced the concept that it could be, doesn't have to be, is that the verse doesn't have to be like a blanket atonement or something like that. But it could be. That's just the normal way language works. So he could either deal with that possibility and show why that's not a real possibility, or he could get a real argument. I don't know. But analogies illustrate concepts. They're not arguments.
This and not my analogy.
So can I ask you, approximately how long ago was Jesus crucified?
Well, probably about 2,000 years.
I would agree. So it says in Romans 6:6, knowing this, that our old self was crucified with him. So how can ourselves be crucified with Jesus 2,000 years ago if he didn't know we were going to exist?
In general, that's the normal thing. A lot of language, like we've already talked about, are generalities. And so in language, you have rhetoric, you have people using sarcasm, you have generalities, hyperbole, idiomatic speech. These are all considerations when you look at how the text is used. And guess what? In the Bible, it's never metaphysics. That's never the thing. When it says no one could come to Jesus, that Jesus is going to keep them all, the people who come to Jesus, guess what? There's an exception. It's a tasking that could be failed because it's not metaphysics. It is a duty. It's a tasking. And so when the Bible talks in these terms, it's not metaphysics.
It's not metaphysics.
And so then I also point out to him, I said, he's talking to the people, his own audience who currently exists. He's not talking to like all future generations. There's no reason to assume anything like that. Matt Slick just blows that off. But I cannot be listening to his atonement nonsense. So we'll jump forward a few minutes. If it lets us. It might not let us.
To the things I say, or you just care about
Yes, I am. They're not making any sense.
Yeah, let's do that.
Man's blood, by man, your blood will be shed. Is that a prophecy?
Yes.
I got to
the
go back.
question that I continually ask you, I never get an answer. Jeremiah 18. God gives a parable of potter and the clay. He's building a vessel. It's marred in his hand. God doesn't get to complete what he originally set out to complete. And so the interpretation is this prophecy, this parable, is that when nations turn from their ways, God will not only do.
I asked about Adam. Adam.
Yeah. God will not only do what he thought he was going to do, but he's not going to do what he said he was going to do. So God thinks he's going to do one thing. In Jeremiah 18, it says, I won't do what I thought I was going to do, and he won't do what he said he was going to do based on changing circumstances. It's not a lie. It's not a mistake. It's just the normal way people operate. No one would describe that as a lie or mistake, except for a pundit, an internet pundit who gets his money from people who pay him to say things that nobody else believes. No one believes it.
And so now I'm calling him out. I'm calling him a grifter, basically. I'm saying that he has a money motivation for the things he's saying. But it looks like my first 3 super chats and it looks like I got $25. So I'm grifting for food for my kids. Feed my babies.
These things. Non-central fallacy.
All right. So go back to Genesis 2:17. Focus on the verse, because God says the day that you eat of it, you will die.
What he thought he was going to do. Yes.
Did God prophesy, predict the future?
So Matt Slick, we skipped over the question he asked, but he said, was that a false prophecy when he said, in the day you eat of it, you will die? Like, that's not a prophecy. You stupid man. That's a threat. He's threatening them. That's action and consequence. That's like, if you don't clean your room, I will spank you. That's a threat. That's what it is. It's not a prophecy. You're a dumb person, Matt Slick.
When you eat this, you will die. No,
if you shed man's blood, by man your blood will be shed. Is that a prophecy?
Yes.
Yes, that's a prophecy. That's a prophecy. Oh, that's like, it's like, I can't.
All murderers they're killed by other men.
No, it's a generic prophecy that things like this will happen.
It's a generic prophecy.
Talking specifically about Adam. I'm asking you about Adam.
O.J. Simpson, he's still alive.
Yeah. So
why is O.J.
asking you about
this prophecy?
He makes some stupid points and arguments. I got to mock him.
True. Why is this?
I'm asking you about Adam.
I'm asking about O.J.
Yeah, I know. And you said generic murderers, plural. Adam is
okay. So he says, okay. So here's his point. Genesis 3, God says, the day you eat of the apple, you will die. And so he's saying, is this a failed prophecy? So I said, if man kills man, by man, his blood shall be shed. Is that a failed prophecy? Because I'm trying to illustrate the concept that he doesn't even know what he's talking about. These are not prophecies. That's not how these things work. And he's just categorically misunderstanding what's going on there. And he's like, oh, that's a general prophecy. It's like, oh, really? So O.J. Simpson, he killed people, and was O.J. Simpson, was he killed by man? And that just didn't happen. So that in his mind, if he was to be consistent, if he have any integrity, he would say, oh, that's a failed prophecy too. But he's not going to do that. There's no intellectual consistency. Matt Slick's rule is whatever he has to say to win a debate, he'll say. It doesn't matter if he believes it, if he doesn't believe it, if it makes any sense. He'll literally just say anything. And so it's not a real interaction.
Singular. I'm asking you about Adam, so you're not on topic. Can you answer the question? Did God make a mistake
in the garden?
Okay, he made a mistake.
No, these are your words. Non-central fallacy. Everyone drink.
Okay, look. So
I bring him back to drink. It's like, you just got to do it. If he's acting in bad faith, I'm going to just bring us back to what we set up in the first place. So,
God make a mistake?
I've said no like 15 times. Are you listening to the things I say, or you just care about?
Yes, I am, and they're not making any sense.
Yeah, so he kept, again, it's like, this has happened before. I keep answering his question. He doesn't want my answer, so he's just going to ask it again. And so I call him out. I said no 15 times. Like,
you have.
Well, yeah, it's because you're not a normal person. Your brain doesn't work like normal people. Normal people would not call that a mistake. If I'm bringing my kids to McDonald's, I say, everyone in the car, I'm bringing you to McDonald's, and on the way there, my kids start misbehaving, and I turn the car around. No one's going to say that I was mistaken about bringing them to McDonald's.
Wow.
It's just when contingencies change, then plans change. God talks about this in Jeremiah 18. God won't do what he thought he was going to do based on circumstances.
Wow. So I'm not normal, huh? Thank you.
Yeah, he literally brags about having Asperger's or whatever on his programs. Like he's such a liar, and he's so disingenuous. Like this whole moral outrage is just more fake posturing. It's a fake person.
Oh, that's good. That's good assessment.
You said it.
Okay. Hey, you guys.
That's your own claim.
You guys, this is it's getting rough. All right, it's getting rough. Let's try to zero in. Let's focus. And we have about 15 minutes left. All right, let's try to get through these 15 minutes in a solid fashion. Stay focused, guys. Let's not make any personal assertions. Let's focus. All right.
Thank you. So,
thank you. You're on my side. You're helping me out here. You're putting this Chris Fisher in his place. Like there's no self-reflection. Like he has no self-awareness about his own bad behavior. Because he's entitled to everything. He's entitled to everything, and if anyone treats him with any little bit of the disrespect he shows everyone else, it's the biggest affront. He doesn't deserve it. He's the teacher. He's the knowledgeable one. Everyone else is just stupid. If they would just shut up and listen to him, everything would be a-okay. And the fact that we're even pushing back is beneath him. Like, why is he even interacting with us? We're so far below him. This is his mindset. This is what you're getting when you interact with this man. He's a bad human being.
Wow, there's so many things. I'm just writing stuff out of the conclusion already. I mean, it's really fascinating. So, okay, so do you believe that God makes mistakes?
No, God has regrets of his own actions. Sometimes God's surprised, taken him back. He said so
he's doing word thinking. He's doing non-central fallacy. He's looking for gotchas. This is not about the Bible. And so again, like I've said it before, Matt Slick hates the God of the Bible. He hates God. Very, very literally. He would not worship God. If open theism is true, he would not worship God, and he mocks God regularly. And so it's like, I do not want to be him or this Calvinist guy in the chat. These people are evil people who hate God, and God might be treating them very poorly on the day of judgment. And so it's like, I do not want to be these people, but they're very hateful, spiteful, evil, and stupid. Like evil and stupid is a pretty bad combination.
He thought Israel would return to him, and Israel did not return to him. He thought that he punished Israel's children in vain, thinking that they would come back to him. People don't classify these things as mistakes. That's incorrect terminology. It's a non-central fallacy.
Okay,
and so
I got a
in the
question
Bible,
for you.
God created man and then regretted making man. He regretted,
like I bring it up like 50 times. He doesn't want to talk about it.
That's his own action.
Yeah.
The text is explicit. God says it. The narrator says it. It's a pivotal part of the plot within Genesis 6. Why do you think that God did not actually repent of his own actions?
It's an anthropomorphism. You said in a debate with Jonathan Singleton, you said this. This is about 15 minutes, 30 seconds in, give or take.
So here's more of his little moral outrages. You said this thing I don't like. Like this is exactly what I predicted at the beginning of the debate. I said he's going to be doing this. Like I said, this is the moralistic fallacy. We'll call it neuroticism. Matt Slick's neurotic. Calvinists are generally neurotic. They'll do things like, "Oh, you guys are just using your emotions. You don't want God to be a certain way because that would make you feel bad." And then like their next post on Twitter will be like, the only reason I didn't commit suicide is because Calvinism gives me such assurances. Like what? Like you guys are mentally unstable.
After the worldwide destruction, God lowers his expectation for men.
Yeah.
God learns that man's heart is evil and corrupt from his youth. He starts.
And so, like, I'm sitting here affirming the things. I'm shaking my head, yes. I'm giving verbal feedback to the audience that yes, all these things are true. I'm doubling down, and without question, I do this. Like, I go, yeah. And Matt Slick doesn't like me doing that.
starts creation anew. God still wants a relationship with mankind at this time. He tries using a single family who could act as a representation, represent. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. God even expects them to be loyal.
He says,
In
hold on.
Genesis 8,
All I'm saying is, yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm like, yep, yes, true, correct, great.
we find God including Abraham in divine decision making. On this basis, in the text, God and Abraham discuss what God might find when he visits a city. The issues about God's justice. Here's the thing. You said, quote, God adopts Abraham's higher standard.
And look how angry he is. So this his anger, his outrage, his moral outrage, his sadness is not about the Bible. He's dealing with some sort of perceived slight or offense that I used in language. It's not about the Bible. It's just about him being able to vent his outrage. This is not an intellectual. This is not an academic. We're dealing with a bad person.
We could read it. We could go look at that.
So
I got it right here. But I mean, what did you mean by God adopts Abraham's higher standard? Could you explain that?
I mean,
sometimes people just say things.
God,
okay,
when people normally talk to God, God listens to them and changes. When Ezekiel, when he says you're going to cook your food with human waste, he says,
okay, so like at this point, I don't yet realize that his main offense is me saying higher standard, because in his idiotic mind, like, there's like a hierarchy of standards and they all have like some sort of metaphysical value in the ether. And so that like God's value set is maximized to the extent that if God did anything other than what God wants to do, then God would be doing a lesser value, and then that violates God in some way. So this is exactly what I was talking about when he asked me to define Platonism, and I said it's about this util maximizing or whatever, trying to maximize God's perfections or whatever. I said that's what Platonism is. That is what Platonism. This man is a Platonist. He's not a Christian. He doesn't care about Christian metaphysics and Christian morality. The thing God often does in the Bible is change and adopt things that man wants to do, and does things against his better judgment. And for example, I don't think I bring it up in this debate, but someone pointed out in the comments somewhere that when God gives Israel a king, he didn't want to do that. He did that against his better judgment, and he'll often do that. But that's just not allowed. The normal thing that happens in the Bible is not allowed in this man's metaphysics. It's not Christian metaphysics. These people just have their own value set. It's like, why are you a Christian at this point?
God, I've never eaten unclean in my life. How about we not do that? God says, okay, we'll just use animal feces instead. In the Abraham incident, God was going to allow a lot more collateral damage. But Abraham is talking to him about standards of righteousness. And he says, well, is 20 people worth the collateral damage? What about 10 people, 5 people? There's this interaction, and the whole point of the interaction is that God listens to people and listens to what they say and how they want to do things and what they think is just and what isn't. We also see this in Moses in Exodus 32, where God is going to kill all of Israel. And guess what Moses says? He says, these Egyptians are going to see you're a death cult God, and they're going to blaspheme your name. It's not going to look good, God.
This is teaching mode again. The voice is teaching. I'm just telling out facts. I'm just stating the things how it is. And so Matt Slick he's letting me go. He doesn't have an in to interrupt. And I'm just spitting fact after fact.
And then God changes his mind because of those arguments. He listens to those arguments, he considers those arguments, and he performs according to what people suggest. God is a responsive God. Prayer means something within the Bible. God listens to us.
I'm asking you about this. You said God adopts Abraham's higher standard. Was Abraham's moral standard better than God?
God killed a lot of innocent people in the flood. Yeah. And so God's willing to accept a lot more collateral damage than Abraham. And so Abraham has a higher standard when it comes to the number of collateral damage of righteous individuals. God adopts his standard. Is it a higher standard? It's a more rigorous standard. Yes.
So Abraham's moral standard was better than God's?
Well, you're making that claim. I'm
you did.
I'm all for collateral damage.
No, you did. You said God adopts Abraham's higher.
He says that I said it because I think he's so stupid. I don't think this is him being obtuse intentionally. I think he just literally is too stupid to understand the things that I'm saying. Like, he just doesn't get it. That, yeah, you could have a higher standard, and it's he's so engrossed in his Platonism. He thinks that there's some sort of ethereal value set that all things are ascribed certain numbers on, and then you get into this game of maximizing numbers of the ether. He doesn't understand that people can have differing opinions on the amount of collateral damage that's acceptable, and none of them be like necessarily morally superior than the other. He just, this is a concept that just doesn't fit with his worldview. It's like he just doesn't physically. I think it looks really bad on him that he can't understand these simple concepts, and then he keeps pressing the point, and he looks really bad to his audience because, like, normal people understand these things.
Standard from what you said, I'm asking you, was Abraham's moral standard better than God's?
No, I will accept even more collateral damage than God. Why would Abraham be better?
So you're the one who said God adopts Abraham's higher standard. So was Abraham's standard better than God's?
No, I just told you that I would be even willing to accept more collateral damage than God. I would have been Jonah saying, God, you should kill all these Ninevites. That was Jonah's standard. And God says, no, I'm not going to punish them. They don't know their left from their right hand. There's a different standard of justice based on people's moral culpability.
And so I'm able to use this responding to his idiotic questions to slip other points in. And so now I'm undermining his Calvinism in the sense that God judges based on culpability. And if determinism was true, no one's culpable for anything. It's not our fault. It's not anything that we have control over. But if God judges on culpability, like fatalism, determinism is false because some people are judged, some people are not judged based on that culpability. No one's culpable for anything. Like Paul says, they're without excuse. If determinism was true, they would be with excuse. Paul's not a determinist. And so I'm able to, he's putting this conversation on his stupid, idiotic feelings about these things, not talking about the Bible, not talking about, this is his chance to emote and to try to bludgeon someone with his moral outrage argument by incredulity. It's like, you got to do what you can with the time.
And that's what we learn throughout the Bible. People are judged based on where they are.
I'm asking you a specific question based on what you said. You said God adopts Abraham's higher standard.
I've answered like
that's
5
what you
times.
said. So here's the question I'm asking. According to that statement, was Abraham's moral standard superior to God's?
I've already told you like 5 times. No, I don't think so.
Yes? No? Okay. Then it was not the case that God adopted Abraham's higher standard.
He's got a higher standard for collateral damage. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And then you said just now God killed a lot of innocent people in the flood?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another thing Calvinists do. They're like, everybody deserves, everyone. I think I pointed out, and I think I mock this idea that these Calvinists think that everyone deserves death. In the Bible, not everyone deserves death. It's not this worm theology. It's like, oh, babies are so guilty that all the babies should die, and there's nothing wrong with babies dying. Like, God gets very mad at Israel for killing people who should not die.
So they were innocent? People were innocent?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong? They weren't sinners? They were just fine?
They're not sinners. God gets mad. He says, you guys, Israel, you kill people who should not die, and you keep alive people who should die. And God is mad. Not everyone's deserving of death. Nothing like that. There are innocent people. There's innocent babies. Okay. Babies have done nothing wrong.
And there's perfect people in the Bible. Job is perfect. It says that it says that Noah's perfect in his generations. People are called perfect in the Bible. It's just like there's a group of righteous in the Bible. These are inconvenient facts for Calvinism, which depends on very specific readings of Paul. That's then ex post facto, just imported back into the Old Testament to undermine all these things and to rewrite and reinterpret everything. It's just there's righteous people. There's people who seek after God within the Bible. It's not Calvinist determinism. It's not infant damnation, original sin. That's just that's just not found in the Bible.
And they died in the flood.
Okay.
It's collateral damage.
Wow. We are by nature children of wrath, Ephesians 2:3.
Yeah. So one thing I didn't point out there is literally Abraham is arguing with God about how many righteous people God is going to find in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the answer is not none are righteous, no, not one. We are all born with original sin, and everyone's deserving of death, even babies. Not like God's actually interested in. Okay, if this many righteous people are found, then we'll save the city. But if not, then we won't. And then Abraham's like, hey, there's righteous people. We don't want to kill those righteous people. And God's like, yeah, we don't want to actually kill those righteous people. It's not a good thing to be killing. Like, that's the whole conversation. There are righteous people. There are righteous people. It's not none of these people are Calvinists.
And all have fallen in Adam. 1 Corinthians 15:22 and Romans 5:18 and 19.
Part says, I need to let myself finish that. Before it says, I've been teaching the grandkids the difference between morals and metaphysics to avoid these weird sin nature issues. Yeah, it's interesting. There's the kids series. It's What's in the Bible. It's made by the VeggieTale guy, Phil Vischer or whatever. It's fairly good, but they do this thing with sin where they show the guy sinning and then he'll get a little dust mote on him, like a little plot of what, like a little mite or something, a little black spot, and then he'll accumulate these black spots. And so they see sin as something that you build some sort of metaphysical tally in. And so it's not obvious that that's actually a thing within the Bible. That's their own projection of how metaphysics work. And so I don't think that that's how sin works. But but I'll let myself finish this because I think we're at a funny part. I'm going to rewind 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
You've fallen in. We are by nature children of wrath, Ephesians 2:3, and all have fallen in Adam. 1 Corinthians 15:22 and Romans 5:18 and 19.
You thought Jesus had a perfect life. Why do you think Jesus sinned?
So now he does this thing. All have sinned. I think my things is flagging up, but he does this thing. All have sinned. So I got to undermine his metaphysics again. All doesn't mean all to him. There are exceptions. His exceptions aren't stated. And so I'm going to say, hey, I thought you thought Jesus did sin. And now he has to go back and explain it. So he can't. What happens is he makes idiotic statements and metaphysical claims that now he has to go back and clarify when I undermine them. And it frustrates him to no end.
He didn't sin. And
well, you just said all sin, right? You said everyone's fallen.
Yeah.
Why do you think Jesus
Adam. Look, I'm trying not to be rude to you, but your biblical theology is severely lacking. This is what you said in 19 minutes and 20 seconds in that same debate that I mentioned earlier. I'll get the context here because you said something that I just thought was stunningly bad. The biblical history is a story of God's failed attempts to reach humanity. Yeah. It is a story of God's frustration, of God's jealousy, his pain.
And so he's like, this is really terrible. And he starts talking about it. And I'm just like, yeah, yep, I said that. Yes, yep, that's true. Yep. And so it undermines his outrage. He's outraged. He needs the audience to feel his outrage. And I'm smiling and I'm affirming the things. It undermines what he's trying to do.
His sorrow is regret. The biblical picture of God is one of relation. To Israel, God is a person. You can talk to God, pray to God, change God's mind, affect God on an emotional level. Here it is. God will often.
He's mad about these things. When he's reading it, he's mad about it. Like the normal biblical statements about God, he's mad about. This man and Calvinists like him, not all Calvinists, but Calvinists like him, they hate God. They hate the Bible. They hate the biblical witness. These people not be Christians if they believed what the Bible actually said.
often do things against his better judgment on account of our prayers.
See how angry he is? Like it happens within the Bible. God doesn't want Israel to have a king. Israel really wants a king. Against his better judgment, he gives Israel a king. It happens. It's in the Bible. He hates it. He hates God.
So you're saying to me then, are you saying that God will do something he knows is not the right thing to do?
Yeah, sometimes God he forgets our sins for his own sake. God tells Israel in Judges, he says, I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore. You guys keep rebelling. There's a cycle of apostasy. You guys could cry out. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm fed up with it and done. What happens? They pray, and all of a sudden, God changes his mind again, and he saves them alive. Because guess what? God is merciful. That's one of his defining characteristics. Jonah says he's a God of repentance. Hosea, Amos, God's a God of repentance. This is God's character. God listens to man. He considers, he changes his mind. He's a lot more merciful than I would be. Again, I'm Jonah over here, and I think the Syrians should be punished. God is not like that. God changes his mind. It's a defining characteristic of God. God listens to people. It happens all the time in the Bible.
Yeah, and you said God will often do things against his better judgment on account of our prayers. So,
yeah, he wanted to kill
so then
all of
you're
Israel
saying
with
then,
Moses.
Yeah, so God thought it would be better to start again with Israel and wanted to kill all of Israel and then replace Israel with Moses' lineage, which is still Israel. You could still complete your promise to Israel by using Moses, who's part of Israel, but then you kill off all the offenders. And he doesn't do that. And so it gets his better judgment. And then what happened? I think I actually follow up and explain this. I'll just let myself talk.
So then are you saying that God knows what the best thing to do is, but he doesn't do it?
Right, because he listens to us. He listens to our prayers, and then he acts accordingly. God was going to destroy all of Israel in Exodus 32. Moses stands up and he gives a multi-tiered argument why God shouldn't do it, and God spared Israel. And guess what happens? Israel dies in unbelief in the wilderness. How did that turn out? How did God's decision to save Israel turn out? Doesn't look very good. God says, I punish.
Yeah, so I'll let myself keep talking, but like, look at what happened to Hezekiah. Wanted 15 more years added to his life. Did that turn out well? It didn't turn out well. It would turn out pretty bad. He did a lot of failure after that. So it wasn't necessarily, in retrospect, what the best decision.
Punished Israel's children in vain. What does vain mean? Why would God punish in vain in your model? The biblical authors just do not share your theology. God is a person. God can interact. God takes advice. In 1 Kings 22, the angels give him possible options, and he chooses between these options. He accepts outside input. It's just a picture of God we got in the Bible.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work with the ramifications of your position. He actually said
he's not doing himself favors. Me saying I'm the biblical guy and you're the philosophy guy. He's not doing himself favors with, yeah, I can't believe that because of whatever ramifications. Oh no, it's a real bad. It's like, did you just say that God accepts advice from outside himself and does something that against what he thinks is best? Oh, how dare you? How dare you, sir? Like Pierce Morgan. How dare you, sir? It's just this outrage. Oh,
that God will sometimes do things he knows he should not do. That's what you're saying. Wow.
Like Exodus
so is this
32.
a moral? So it's a moral thing because all of God's choices
Why would
are
it
moral.
be a moral thing? All God is that there's a Bible verses that says all God's choices are moral.
So like it. I got to go back to his face when I first say that. oh, here we go. Oh, I just gotta pause for a second. Oh man, what a dumb man. Oh. So, so I mock him here, and I need to mock him because what he's saying is stupid. He says like all God's choices are moral. There's some sort of metaphysical utility value on all God's choices, and they're ranked on some sort of moral scale. and he maximizes moral God's a util monster. He maximizes moral utility on all these. Like, this is absolute nonsense. It's not how reality works. There's no metaphysical util scale of morality. There's lateral choices that don't have morality index, and the morality that's assigned to whatever God does is subjective. And sometimes in the Bible, people criticize God for what God does and God's actions. And you could even see this in the interaction we already talked about with Abraham. God's being criticized for what God's going to do by people, and God accepts someone else what they offer. It's the Calvinists are not thinking in biblical terms and categories. They got their own philosophy, and that takes precedence over the Bible.
Is that there's a Bible verses that says all God's choices are moral? There's a Bible verse that says that, or is that your like philosophy?
First Peter 1:16 says, "Be holy, for I am holy," and so the holiness is pervasive to what his nature is.
Oh, it's like I'm like dealing with an idiot. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sure that verse means whatever you claim. Yeah, that verse means whatever your stupid philosophy.
Therefore, all decisions he makes are holy.
People could be holy too. So if we're holy, then we only make holy moral decisions. Yeah, this is a call for perfection. People are defined as perfect in the Bible. Job is perfect. You have Noah, he's perfect. There's perfect people in the Bible. Some people don't die like Elijah. It's just what we see in the Bible. It doesn't mesh up with the model that you're trying to present here. The biblical data just doesn't fit it nice and pretty like you would like. It just not there.
You beg the question a great deal. You take verses, you say this is what it means. You don't look at them in the context like I've already done here several times.
I've looked at it in the context. He's done it multiple times. He looked at context. He just read a couple verses before and a couple verses after, and he's like, "I did my contextual analysis." He did like you just read a couple verses. Like, where was the analysis? Where was it? Oh man.
You what it means, and then when I ask you what it means in context, you deny even answering the question. You go someplace else and give an exposition about something not related to the topic. So this is what you've done many times. I'm just trying to get to the heart of the matter here. And so God's moral decisions, everything he does is moral because it comes out of his character, his essence, which is holiness. You can't say that God does things that are not moral. It just doesn't make any sense to say that. So then you're saying here that God then makes choices he should not do. He's making morally wrong choices. This is what your position leads to.
Your claim. You had to explain the claim with a huge paragraph of text. It's not in the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk like this. They don't share your theology. It's just not biblical theology. We're outside the realm of the Bible when you're talking in paragraphs of philosophy. It's just not there.
And you're the one who said that God would often not do what is right. And so you're the one who says this. That's not
I didn't say that. You said that. You said that again. God will go against his better judgment and allow people to make decisions, and he'll follow through their decisions. God tells Ezekiel, go cook your food with human waste. Ezekiel said, no, God, that's not, I don't want to break kosher. He says, okay, we'll do it with cow waste instead. Instant change of mind based on petitions of people. Throughout the Bible, God is responsive to prayer. Is there anywhere in the Bible where it says God does not respond to prayer? God's responsive because open theism is true. God changes. God gets information from outside himself. God interacts with creation. Simplicity is false. Timeless is false. Immutability.
So this is just like a punching bag. I'm just punching up all his theology all over the place, making a whole scattered bunch of points, and I'm just talking as much, like he set himself up for this. He set himself up for this. This debate is one of his own makings. He's not that intelligent.
Possibility. All these things crumble when you just look at the biblical text. And guess what? You go take a class at Yale about the Old Testament, and they'll laugh when you bring up these Platonic categories: immutability, impassibility, all these things, simplicity, not biblical concepts. Christine Hayes laughs when she thinks about students who said that God doesn't repent. She says, yeah, God repents. It's just a fact of the text. She's just a normal person reading the Bible. Nobody who's just reading the Bible like a normal person doesn't think God repents within Genesis 6. It's a fact of the text.
So normal
part of the narrative, part of the plot. It's critical.
So it's called argumentative populum when you say normal people, that you're the standard of what you know
The
what
Bible's
normal people
written
are
to
going to be.
normal people. The
Malachi
Bible is
3:6.
advocacy. The Bible
Malachi
is
3:6.
advocacy.
For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore,
People
you, O
don't
sons
change.
of Jacob, of change are consumed. We're talking about the Lord God. And the Bible says in Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Does God change in his nature?
Well, the Bible says man doesn't change as well. Again, if you read Malachi, guess what happens? And so God says, the context of the verse, we go to the context, he says, if you repent, then I will change. In the context of his not changing statement. And then what happens at the end? At the end, there's a bunch of believers, and they think that God might accidentally punish them when God comes back. And so they're really worried about this. And so God has to alleviate their fears. And it's not Platonism what happens. What happens is God writes a brand new book in heaven to convince these people that they're not going to be accidentally punished when God dispenses justice.
And so like people like don't know the context of Malachi whatsoever. And so this is like, I think this is like new information to them that I'm giving them. And so it sounds ridiculous at first because the believers at the time of Malachi were not modern Christians. They didn't think of God in the terms of modern Christians. They didn't have the same theology that we hold today. And so when you tell people that they're worried that God accidentally punishes them when God returns, because they might get lumped in with like the wicked, and then God has to write a book of their names to reassure them that that's not going to happen. Like, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds absurd, but that is what's happening in the verse, within the chapter. And it just doesn't, it's so outside the realm of what normal people think about the Bible and how God operates and how the religion of Christianity operates. It's like they have to go look it up to see if that's what it's actually saying, but that's what it's actually saying. So it's this big monkey wrench into their worldview, their own proof text, if you just look at the context. And so I do like pulling this up. I do like pointing this out because it changes people's perspective. It's like you're categorically thinking of the Bible in the wrong terms. It's like that's just not who this was written to. That's just not their theology.
It says your name's written here. You're not actually going to be punished. The whole context of Malachi is not Calvinist metaphysics. It's about God changing in relation to man, responding to them. Return to me and I'll return to you. Very next verse. That's what Malachi is about. It's not about your metaphysics. It's not about Platonism. It's not about you can't have any parts and you're in the simple, timeless being. That's nothing like that. That's not what the Bible's about.
Okay. So does God change?
All the time. He's dynamic. That's part of his core character. That God.
Does his nature change?
That's again, what do you mean by nature? You haven't told me exactly. God.
So he did define nature, but it was absolute nonsense, gibberish. It was your ontological characteristics that outwardly manifest essentially, or something. It's just all absolute nonsense.
Nature is the triune essence of God, of what he is as a single and unique being. Does that
God
change?
Became flesh. Yeah, becoming flesh. Becoming flesh, that's a change. God became flesh. You don't think God became flesh because the human part of Jesus is not divine. It's not God. But in the Bible, God changes.
So he kept pausing, and so I was like, okay, I could just keep going. I gave him a chance to respond. He didn't take it, so I'm like, okay, just keep talking. 20 seconds left.
What he's consistent. When the Bible says God does not change in Malachi 3:6, it's about his character. He's going to stay true to Israel, even when Israel is not true to him. When you come across these phrases, that's typically what they're about, that he's consistent with his promises.
You're a heretic.
All right, guys. You guys.
Okay, so that's our cross debate. That's our our cross examination. There are a lot of good parts, a lot of funny parts. I do not have regrets. There's maybe like small word choices that I might do differently if I were to have like a curated, but overall I think it went really well for me, this interaction. So the opening went really well. His opening went well for me because I had predicted all the things that he's doing, and then the cross examination went well for me. It all would. Things tend to work out, I guess, in my life where it's just like, now we get this on the internet forever, this humiliation for Calvinism and Calvinists. And I think another helpful thing is it teaches. I'm going to put this back on the screen. I'm just laughing at this guy. I think one of the useful things that it does is it does teach open theists and Christians how to deal with people who have this character. Like he's a complete narcissist. He's dishonest, anti-intellectual. He just regularly does these things without real consequence, and it teaches us, like, we don't have to endure this. We don't have to roll over. We don't have to be nice. We don't have to shine his shoes for him and just be like, oh, please, Matt Slick, teach me all your things. Like, we don't have to live like this. We could live better, and there's ways to disarm this. There's ways to treat these people and to defrock them, to dethrone them, and guess what? I don't have to interact with these types of people anymore. And so it makes my life better too. Like, one of the rules I have on Facebook is, like, if a Calvinist ever uses laugh react, just block them. Life is going to be a lot better not dealing with these, like literally they can't process information in their heads. Why do you need them in your life? Talking to them. You just don't need that. It's not worth the effort and time, and your life is going to be a lot nicer. Never have to interact with certain types of people ever in your life. It's great. But we will cut there. Yeah, if anyone has any, I'm very interested in your own perceptions of the debate and the cross-examination in retrospective, particularly if you had an original comment, and if you want to update that comment, or say how maybe a second rewatch might have affected you, or what considerations that was brought to the forefront on a subsequent viewing, or if your opinions changed over time on the, I literally read like every single comment that YouTube notifies me about. That doesn't notify me about everything, but I do read them all, and it's very interesting to see how people have processed this. And so far, I think it's pretty overwhelming that it is in my favor, and people are affirming what I did and the consequences and the style of the debate. And so, but anyways, also you could start a thread on the God is Open Facebook page if you want. We could talk about things like this and how the debate went. Maybe your criticism. Oh, I'm too mean. I'm such a mean guy. But anyways, we will end there tonight, and we'll close out. So let's see if I got an outro anywhere.